Good. Thank you. Okay, good evening. It's good to see you all. I hope you were able to get here all right. Haven't worn yourselves out with shoveling. We are here tonight for 3 budgets. We will start with the Council on Aging and move to the cemetery and then the fire department. I'm glad we didn't have to cancel tonight. We will also be meeting tomorrow night with the school committee right here. And beyond that, no guarantees. At any rate, I'd like to welcome Mary Ann Sullivan and Maureen Conlon to join us at the table here and tell us about the Council on Aging. And, I stand corrected. Not Maureen Conlon, but Dennis Cohen. We're glad to see him here. And we can start, I guess I might say a couple of things. About 3 years ago, when I first joined the Warrant Committee, I asked Mary Ann to send me the Senior Highlights newsletter so I could...
And you're still getting it.
Actually, I'm getting 2 copies. I need to talk to you about that. I'm old, but not that old. Come on. Anyway, it's important. I made sure that everybody on the Warrant Committee got a copy of your November newsletter in which you made a particular pitch. But I expect we'll hear that again tonight. So I'm going to put your budget up on the screen, I hope, and we'll move on. Okay, and this is a PDF, but we will try and zoom it up. So basically, the main difference is the personnel line,
Right.
and level service. In other words, delivering the service you need to continue delivering the same service that you have been. You need more resources.
Right.
And if you don't have that, then basically the level dollar for personnel would be $175,000. Level service is $211,000. So not a huge increase, but significant. And why don't you tell us what's at the bottom of that?
Okay. We're coming before you tonight to, as it's stated in the budget, to request a new position at the Council on Aging, which would be a full-time van driver. The reason we need the full-time van driver is more and more elderly are living longer, which is a wonderful thing. The sad part is the first thing that most of them have to give up is their license. This snowstorm today was just proof positive how much we need somebody full-time. It was very difficult. We actually haven't been able to get transportation for the seniors today, for the last couple of days, because of the fact that right now our staffing pattern is part-time van drivers. One is 17 hours a week funded by the town. The other 3 are part-time. And what the part-time people tend to be is retired. One is a retired bus driver. One is a retired meal carrier. They're people who are in their mid to late 60s who are looking for, part-time work, no benefits, not a huge hourly rate. But what they see as the perk is in a situation like this, bad weather. They're not really, it's a part-time job. They don't want the responsibility of transporting the seniors, which I know is difficult. I mean, I think of the police and what they're doing. And I think it kind of like, brought it into perspective a little more today when we were talking about this. If we had a full-time person there, most people, when you have a full-time job, do whatever you can to get into work. If I was one of the part-time van drivers, I think on the other hand, I would say, gee, you know, these vans are big, I'm blocking traffic. We tried it one day, and what happened is the van was in the middle of the street unloading groceries for the seniors, and 15 cars were behind him. Next thing he knew, there was a police officer there, which there should have been because he was blocking the street. So it's kind of a difficult situation. And when you have part-time people, they're not as, you know, I don't know if this is the correct word, as vested in the position. You know, they're doing it, they do a great job, they're wonderful, wonderful, kind people. But we just see the need, for example, going into Boston, we do a lot of Boston transportation. A lot of the appointments, for instance, at Mass General, Mass Ioneer, they want you in there at 9 o'clock. That means you have to leave Milton at 7:30. The part-time van drivers all have, a lot of them are grandparents, you know, they have to be back to pick up students, you know, their grandkids at school. So we're limited with these part-time van drivers. We do have one van driver who really goes above and beyond. He tries his best to do it. We're also seeing a significant increase in the people that need to get to chemo and dialysis 5 days a week. As you know, there are 3 senior housing complexes in town. They do provide minimal transportation, but what prohibits some of the seniors from doing it is the cost. As most of you know who have heard me before, the Council on Aging van service is a donation-based system. In other words, Milton Residents for the Elderly can send you a bill. If you go into Boston, Fuller Village can send you a bill. We don't do that. It's a suggested donation because the vans we get through a federal grant, and one of the stipulations is you can ask for a donation, but you can't demand it. So that puts us in a position where more and more people, you know, just given the economy today, are not able to afford a higher fee, so to speak, to get into Boston. So it's putting more and more demands on our service. Michael Belf is one of our newer board members. He was actually a selectman in another town, and I'd like to share with you, you can just take it home and read it. We did a presentation not only for the Board of Selectmen, but the Personnel Board, and he is really, I guess the way you'd describe it is he's the factual PowerPoint man who can do it, and I'm the one who tells the story. So this was a great presentation he put together. You know, that just gives you a lot of information about comparable towns. Dennis, want to pass that around? And, you know, where Milton stands on the list. We do have one of the largest senior populations on the South Shore. And I think when we look at the transportation program, let me just, my glasses on. In fiscal year 14, our van service, including driver's salaries and the gas for the cars, came up to $76,996. The town funded $28,848, which left us with a shortfall of $48,148 that needed to be raised from private donations and fundraising. That's 60% of the total transportation budget. I don't know how much more. I can tell you how much more fundraising I can do. I am totally burnt out. And if it wasn't for the donation from the Copeland Family Foundation, I mean, there's no way our entire community can thank them enough for all they do. But for the last 14 years, $25,000 specifically for the van fund, but always with the stipulation, you know, we're happy to do it, but you can't count on it every year. Thank you, God, we've gotten it every year, but again. And then the Friends of the Council on Aging, who do such a great job at fundraising. And last year, Maureen Conlon, who's behind us, set up a new fundraiser called Run Milton, which is a half marathon. And this year, she's going to do her second Run Milton with the proceeds going to the van fund. But again, it's a vital, vital service to the elderly residents of the town. That's, you know, 60% of it is through fundraising. I mean, I'm starting my 22nd year here, and it's tough to raise funds. It really is. We did golf tournaments. We did whatever we could. But I just think it's time that we have to look at the overall budget. The seniors are paying exorbitant, as we all are, high property taxes. They're not asking for a lot. We have wonderful police, fire, DPW, you know, things like that. But what they need most is help to, you know, be in their own home, remain independent, but get what they need. So I think, you know, the Board of Selectmen unanimously supported it. The Personnel Board unanimously supported it. And I know you're probably going to think I'm crazy, but I have, let me just make sure I have the right number as of today, 2,072 signatures from residents of the town who supported. I know this is an old-fashioned way to go, but we're a very popular voting place. We have so many people in and out. And, you know, we just asked them, we had younger residents of the town that for the first time looked at this issue and said, really? I didn't know that. A couple of them took the petition to neighborhood block parties and got signatures. You know, so I think it's more understood than it's ever been in the town. And I just think it's a position that really needs to be funded. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, any comments.
Great. Paul, sorry.
Marion, your transportation into Boston, is that mostly for medical?
Oh, it's always for medical.
It's always
yeah,
for
yeah.
medical.
Let me,
Okay.
and I'm sorry if I repeat this because people have heard this before. Let me tell you what we do with transportation. Medical, top priority.
Yes.
Any type of treatment, as I said, dialysis, chemo, 5 days a week, top. Physical therapy, top. Next is grocery shopping. They need to get to the grocery store. Third is activities at the senior center. Fourth would be like a trip. They love to go to Trader Joe's in Hingham or Foxborough, things like that. I'll tell you what we don't do. Never have, never will. We don't do trips to Foxwood. We're not your typical senior center. We don't do bingo. We don't do anything like that. Our bands we have to prioritize because we have so many residents. So not only do we go to the Boston hospitals, but we do a huge, huge number to Milton Hospital. I'm happy to report that, you know, since Peter Haley came on board, we've talked with him. He's very, very well aware of the situation of how many seniors we're transporting. It's something, he just got a new public relations person on board that, you know, maybe the hospital will be able to help, you know, a little more with, you know, funding this program. But that has like a double-edged sword because if, you know, the hospital says, well, maybe we can give you, just as an example, $5,000 a year, it doesn't fix the problem because it's that temporary funding, you know, fundraising issue again. So you're back to square one.
Well, don't say no.
Oh, no, I wouldn't, trust me, I wouldn't say no. We have a lot of gas needs for the van. But on the other hand, it's not something that, you know, as I said, 60%, we need this van driver position desperately.
Kevin?
Yeah, Marianne, I'm 100% in favor of this. I just wanted to ask a few questions, maybe one particular question, but because I'm ignorant of the process. When a person needs to go to a Boston medical appointment, the van driver will pick them up at their home,
Right.
drive them to Boston. Do they wait for them there?
What we usually do, if we have, say, 3 going into Boston, we'll put them all on the same van. So the van driver will go in. Our van drivers all have cell phones, so if Mrs. Smith is at MGH, she'll call and say, I'm done, and they'll wait for the 3. It's never like that it's a 3 or 4 hour wait. If there's one person going into Boston, only because, and it's gotten worse lately, I'll tell you, the other day it was 2 hours for the van driver to get in. If they don't have to be right back, the van driver will wait. Most appointments at a doctor's are, you know, best case scenario an hour, worst case scenario 2 hours. We try to do Boston between 9 and 2 because if you do that 4 o'clock appointment, you're looking at getting out of there at 6:30, and the vans, you know, should be off the road by 5 o'clock. So we, you know, some cases wait. If there's a rare case where we're stuck, we'll ask the van driver, which is tough to do, come back to Milton, maybe do a route to Milton Hospital or Quincy, go back into Boston. But sometimes it's not, you know, it doesn't make sense money-wise not to pull them out of there right away.
Right.
So
But you do attempt to coordinate it? Okay,
Absolutely,
great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Jean?
Yeah, do you pay all the part-time van drivers the same, or are they?
No. The one slot for the town, he's a Chapter 13 employee, so he's on a pay scale. That would be Frank Tevenin. The rest of the van drivers, they range between $13 and $16 an hour. Again, with no benefits. So the position we're looking for would be 37.5, and it would be a benefited position.
Darnell?
Couple quick question. We call them a van driver. Do we also have just cars that we take them in with?
We do.
Or also-
Actually, the Friends of the Council on Aging purchased a Honda Accord, which is great on
Great on
gas.
gas, that's what-
And Tim Fallon, who is great, gave us an old Crown Victoria, which is good on gas, too. We're looking at, the possibility, one of our vans is really in rough shape. We're looking at the possibility of maybe, do we want to get another car, or do we want to get another van, or what we want to do. But especially for Boston, it's tough to take the big vans in there, so we try and put the cars in as much as we can. So right now, we have 2 cars and 3 vans.
And I think we spoke about this before quite a few times about, I think the town does need to step up to take care of a bigger portion of council aging, because one, it's a large portion of our town that's going underserved, and we need to address that.
And
Definitely.
truly,
It's just bottom line.
transportation
Transportation
is the biggest issue for us.
They ask
It
how
really
can we
is.
address, it's a direct correlation of where you need to be addressed.
Right.
And if I could say one thing to that, Darnell, I heard a statistic that 60,000 Americans are going to be turning 60 every day for the next 10 years until the baby boom generation ends in 2024. So if we have 6,300 seniors right now, in 5 or 6 years' time, we're going to have 8,000 or 9,000. So it's only going to exacerbate the problem if we don't do something about it now.
And the younger seniors, as Dennis mentioned, the 60-plus, which I'm one of, they're looking for different things than the older seniors. Most of them are driving. What that group is looking for is programs in the evening, programs on Saturdays. The Hingham Council on Aging now is open 3 nights a week until 7 o'clock, and on Saturdays from 10 to 2. They're saying, I want yoga, or I want, different things that interest that particular group. They're not the ones that are looking really for the medical transportation. That group is like the 70-plus group. But the oldest senior we transport is 102. And that's the group, it's great, everybody's living longer, but on the other hand, it's so hard for them because it's a different generation. Not many elderly have the luxury of having adult children who can, take off from work and take them. It's the whole picture in elder services has changed. And I feel bad for the seniors because sometimes they'll call and they'll say, they're almost like embarrassed. They'll say, my daughter would help if she could, but she has a full-time job and 2 kids. And honestly, I can relate to that. I think the hardest part of our job, and I always go back to Rick Neely telling me this, you have to find a way to say no. If you sat in my chair for one day and you heard these people, you can't say no. You move heaven and earth. And I'm not saying we can all the time, do it, but it's tough to say no. But, and I think that's part of where the fundraising portion has come in. I've gotten really good at fundraising. I think I have another career out there. But, I go into the fruit center now, and Michael says, what do you need? It's okay. Or I pick up the phone and call Ken Quigley, and he says, okay, you can have my credit card. But I think I've I don't know if that's the right word, I guess it is, enabled the fundraising to continue, because I've done it, heart and soul, because I never wanted to get to the point where I didn't have a van driver, or I didn't have gas for the van. So you kind of like go above and beyond, which probably isn't the right way to do it, but, here we are today.
Great. Betty, go ahead.
Do you keep the statistics of how many rides you give?
We do, Betty.
All right. Do you know what that is?
We break it down monthly by location.
I also was just wondering how many folks are asking to go into Boston and how many are you driving to other area hospitals?
So in FY14, we did 7,890 van rides. I don't have the sheets exactly where they were, but I would tell you the ratio for medical in Boston is 40 as opposed to Milton.
Okay. You know what, I just looked very casually at other council on agings and mostly on their websites, but I work in Dedham, so I looked at Dedham's, I looked at Norwood's, and I think I looked at Sharon's, I can't remember the other one. No one's driving into Boston
Nope.
except us.
Yeah.
It just seems like everybody else is taking them to their local hospitals, Dedham Medical,
Right.
Norwood Hospital, but no one's driving into town.
I think the difference is so many people in our community, given the proximity we are to the, the hospitals in Boston, a lot of people opt to go there. Sometimes we'll say to them, like, it's very difficult when they have physical therapy in Boston. I can certainly understand most people want to go to Dana-Farber for their, treatments. But like physical therapy, we'll say, gee, did you know there's physical therapy places? But my surgeon was in Boston, and he wants me to go back there for therapy, So we do try and encourage them, but on the other hand, it's definitely their choice.
Hey, Michael?
Betty, just to add a supporting point to that, because of our proximity to Boston, that situation has been created in part by the hospitals. Because if the services can be offered cheaper in Boston, or for whatever other reasons, our hospital here has a relationship with Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. The system has grown up to expect that the residents that live this far from Boston will be able to get to Boston for treatment, so the services might not be offered as local.
Yeah.
And I think too, especially with the elderly population, a lot of them see, the wonderful medical facilities we have in Boston as, where they should be. We have a great hospital here local, but most of them, if their primary is in Boston, that's where they want to go for the treatment.
Okay, Jane?
Is there any, are these, the van that you're going to get, is that fitted differently than any other van that,
They're lift-equipped and wheelchair accessible.
okay.
All three of them?
Yes, all three of the vans, right. The cars obviously are not. And the other thing that's put it, and I know you have a full agenda, but the other thing that's really impacted us this year is the ride. I'm sure you're all familiar with and I don't want to bash the MBTA, they've been bashed enough. But this year, the ride increased 50%. What also happened is they require elderly residents to go to Charlestown to be re-screened. So you would go to Charlestown in kind of like a simulated studio, and they'd see how far you could actually walk. This to me, I've been up on Beacon Hill like a crazy person, but a lot of seniors who were qualified for the ride, they've now determined that, yes, in fact, Mrs. Smith can walk from, Brook Road to the bus stop. It's only, less than 1/10 of a mile. But what they didn't take into consideration is bad weather. How could Mrs. Smith then get there? So a lot of people who are ride eligible are now not ride eligible. And throughout the state, Emmett Schmazo, who runs this program for the state, will tell you firsthand, this has put a huge impact again on senior center transportation because people who were taking the ride aren't eligible to take it anymore. It's just horrific what they have to go through. It really is. So that's put another burden on senior centers, throughout the Commonwealth. And the other thing in Milton, as you all know, is, bus service, trolley service. That really doesn't work too much for the elderly. A couple of them have asked about trying, is it called Uber, Uber, whatever. Cab rides are cost prohibitive. And then you have, we had a lady who took a cab ride from right across from the high school on Central Ave to the hospital. And she said, I was in Mattapan Square and I knew something was wrong. She said, I know my route. And when she talked to the cab driver, he said he didn't understand. And when she got back, it was $47. And she's a very sharp woman. And she said, I don't have the money. So she called us and we called the police, who were great, went right down. And, this particular cab isn't operating in Milton anymore. But they're victims they're so desperate to get to where they need to go. They'll use any resources they can, but the best resource they can use is, the Council on Aging vans in their own community.
How much is the ride? Does it vary about where you're going, or?
The MBTA
Yeah.
ride? Yeah, it used to be $4 each way, so now it's gone up to $8. And they'll take you, but what happens with that, and it might work with some people, but they have a pickup, so they'll pick up 3 people in this area, Milton, Dorchester, take them into Boston, maybe swing through West Roxbury. There could be up to 8 people on the van, and then they have to wait in there to get you back. And there have been horror stories. One man from Milton who was legally blind was left in Boston with no way to get back. It's not, and especially if you're going through something like chemo or radiation, you're feeling excuse my language, lousy to begin with afterwards. And then you're on a van, and, maybe they'll do West Roxbury and Milton would be last. So it could be an all-day ordeal for these people.
Sure. Wow.
Darnell?
No, that was a question about the ride.
Okay, so I forgot to mention earlier tonight that we were all sorry to hear about Paul Kelly, your chairman. And I know his nephews and nieces. I don't know his family directly, but
18 years, he did a lot.
yeah.
So he usually sat beside me, so I conned Dennis into sitting beside me tonight in case I had to be muzzled or anything. That's my problem. I'm too passionate about what I do. But if you just, and they're so grateful. I don't, just one more thing and then I'm done, truly, Ted.
I'm not done.
Okay, well, I'm done. I won't get on my soapbox anymore. But, the seniors truly care about this town. I've lived in the town for 41 years. I'm a Dorchester girl, so I'm not one of these, people that were born here. But they care so much about the town. They care about the schools. They care about every single thing that goes on. They support overrides. And I think this is our time. It's not a lot of money. We're talking not even $40,000 that this person would be paid, excuse me. And I think it's our time to say to them, we understand what you're going through. And what I'm hearing for the young people, the younger people, is if we grow old in the town of Milton, boy, I hope we have these services in place. So I think it's just the right time to do it. I think it's the fair thing to do. And I think it's just kind of like thanking them for the wonderful community we have here today.
Sure. I wanted to pick up on the point Dennis made about the increasing population of, the increasing percentage of seniors in our population in Milton. If you check the Milton Housing Production Plan, which is posted on the town website, pages 14 and 15 tell you the story, and you discover that currently, or as of 2010, the percentage was about 15, a little greater than 15% for the population age 65 and above in the town, and by 2020 it's projected to be 21.1%, so an increase of 25-30% in 5 years. The basic population of the town is projected to remain fairly flat. So we are an aging town, and there will be more demands on the services of the provided by the Council on Aging, and it would be smart for us to, I think, beef it up as we can.
Ted, the other thing that surprised me was I didn't work on it, but I went to all the meetings on the Master Plan Committee, and I expected when they met with me at the COA, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I've heard that before. And then when the report came back and the Master Plan listed, senior services, senior housing, like pretty much near the top of the list, I was like, and I didn't sell it. She came, when I met with Daphne, she said, this town really has an aging population. So I think this is kind of like the perfect time, and I think that was another reason we decided this is the time to ask for a full-time van driver, because it's not just us saying it, these brilliant people these consultants are saying it too, so I thought that was another advantage time-wise.
So I have a couple of other items about your budget.
Okay.
Just very quickly. I think you could be $1,500 short on electricity. I know you say that you're not worried about it,
But I am, because I got the bill yesterday.
Okay.
I'm really worried about it.
Yeah.
The portion of your bill that you're getting this year is reflective of the increase, because that took effect in January, I think.
January, that's when we just saw it.
And that was unforeseen. So keep track of it and see if you go over
Yep, I
budget.
have.
You were fairly well funded for the balance of this year for your electric line.
Right.
I think you'll probably be all right, but I think next year unless we adjust that line for you, you're gonna be about 15.
And the other thing that happened since
So
the
we're gonna
budget
be
was,
looking at that.
was submitted, cable has now wired the senior center, for live feed, if that's what they call it. So I'm anticipating maybe more meetings over there in the evening, which will contribute to that expense as well.
Oh, we won't bother you.
No, they did it last week, but, it's a nice building to have a meeting. You've
It
got
is.
plenty of room, plenty of parking.
And we're also, you should know, well, you probably do know that Consolidated Facilities, sort of punch list for projects next year has 3 projects that the Council on Aging lined up, which would make the climate nicer for you, so the meetings will be more comfortable. So we're looking at that as well.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, you're not the smallest budget in town, you're the next to the smallest, but you're an important one. They all are.
Right.
And, we will certainly be looking carefully at your request over contractual levels.
Okay. And, on behalf of the seniors and the Council on Aging Board and staff, thank you so much. You're all volunteers, and, we appreciate the time and effort you put into this. It's certainly not an easy job, and in a perfect world, there'd be enough money to go around, but it doesn't happen, so thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marion.
Thanks for coming in. Dennis, thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome to stay.
I want to be here, you gotta stay.
All right. Okay, we need to shift gears and, let's see, we're gonna move from the Council on Aging to the cemetery, not literally, but, oh, well.
Timing is everything, isn't it?
So, we have Therese Desmond with us now at the cemetery, and I thought maybe to begin, we'd just run through that presentation you gave us last year, because we have about 6 new members of the warrant committee that haven't seen it. So is that something you'd like to do?
Well, I printed out the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
I just got back from Staples, and I left the flash drive there, so I can't show it to you on the
Well,
screen.
you sent it
but
to me, I have it,
You have it. Okay, then can you put that,
if you want to do it that way.
that was last year, right?
Yeah.
I've just updated a few things. We've raised some more funds over this year and stuff, but that would be, give you a general knowledge of what the cemetery, how we operate, and what our priorities are.
Pretty quick. It's fun.
I guess we're gonna do it.
Okay,
Do it.
Do you want to pass that out?
sure. You just take one. Can I have one? In case you need to press it.
All right. Talk to me here.
This is the best one. You can have some after, it has the best color, because we ran out of color.
What?
These are free.
Who's helping me here?
Print it right down, so you can-
Darnell.
Oh, these are a lot
If I
nicer.
hit the slideshow and just go, it should be fine.
You all go-
Does this have the soundtrack?
No, it didn't.
No, okay.
I was the soundtrack.
Julia.
Let's see, we need where?
I'll
How do we make it better?
What? That was very expensive for the last person who was teaching her daughter to drive and got in an accident.
I
We haven't had an
I had a feeling it was when I drove my kid.
Bikes are fine.
Where I ride my bus.
Is that all we get?
This one, like, you should be able to just stop it before the next one.
Here's yours.
Oh, thank you. Yeah?
Put the space bar over that.
That's very
The
kind
back
of
space and over
small.
the back.
Kind of small, huh?
It's fine.
That's what it is. No, you're good.
Oh.
No, you're good.
Okay, that will help me kind of provide a framework for my discussion about what the cemetery provides.
Great.
Okay, so as you saw on the cover page, Milton Cemetery was established in 1672, 10 years after the incorporation of the town. Our priority at the cemetery is to service families and funerals, and the staff that we have are trained cemeterians, which A lot of you might not know what a cemeterian is, but a cemeterian is a person who provides a service to the bereaved. And that's what we hope to provide to the people who have lost loved ones and buried them in the cemetery, that we can acknowledge their loss and try to provide what kind of services they require after their loved one is left there. I think cemeterians have a particular call to be able to assess someone who's lost a family member, because often they react with anger or with grief, and we have to be sensitive to that, because you just have to provide the service that person's asking for. Some person might come in and be very upset that their grave is not in the best shape, and the staff that works there, they're very kind to them, and they understand that that's a priority for that family, and they address it. And then often that person will come back and say, "I'm sorry, I was just, upset. It was a bad day." And it's a kindness between individuals, and I think that the families of Milton appreciate the high level of maintenance that the staff provides, so that they can feel comforted that their loved one is in a beautiful place of resting place. And I would have to also note that the staff over the past few weeks has gone over and above, trying to, we've been very busy with burials. And if you see the cemetery's not open, it's because we're so busy with burials. Some of the streets aren't wide enough for a car to get through. But we had Saturday before last, we had 5 burials, and Monday during the blizzard we had 2, and we made it work. And as people expect when they get up in the morning, even if it's a blizzard, to get on the T and to go to a funeral, and so we kind of make it happen if we can. As I mentioned before, the care of the grounds is of the utmost importance. It's a beautiful cemetery designed back in the mid-18th century. The addition of most of the new cemetery by Copeland and Cleveland, and it's one of the premier garden cemeteries in the state of Massachusetts. I think it is, besides Sleepy Hollow, the only garden cemetery that's also municipal. The garden cemetery movement was something that was mid-19th century, and that was spearheaded as a use of cemeteries for, it was almost like a park. That was before parks came into vogue, and people would visit the cemeteries and visit their loved ones and walk the grounds. So we were lucky enough to have the overall plan of the cemetery done by some talented landscape architects that were working at the same time Frederick Law Olmsted was. They actually, Copeland and Cleveland, as it says on the slide, applied to the city of New York to design Central Park, but they lost out to Frederick Law Olmsted. And the streets of Milton Cemetery were laid out by Ernest Bowditch, who also laid out the streets at Mount Auburn. The only difference between Milton Cemetery and Mount Auburn is the amount of money in our perpetual care fund. We'd have a lot more people working for us.
Nice.
I think Mount Auburn Cemetery has a staff of 80 in the summertime, and we have a staff of 8 to 14, so that's the difference.
Are they a little bigger?
They are, we're 102 acres, and I think they're about 180. And they're maxed out their space too, so they're doing the same thing we are, is analyzing how to stretch the available space in the cemetery, whether that's removing roads that are little used or laying out graves and pathways. Or building any mausoleums so that people can be buried in a building. At this point, that's a priority of the cemetery trustees to plan for the future, because with the inventory that we have right now and our plans for the future, we're looking at 15, 16 years of grave sales. So we're getting to the end of the cemetery that started back in the 17th century. So
So just another 15 to 16? And then you'll be
of
on
grave
site.
sales. And then we'll have, many years of still making burials in existing plots.
Okay.
But we have put a moratorium on the sale of graves. Now we're only selling to people who have a death in the family, and and the deceased has to be a Milton resident. And it's trying to preserve the graves that we have for Milton residents.
You're still selling space in the garden for crematorium remains,
The yes.
cremated remains, right?
Yes, and the Garden of
Garden of-
Honor. We have a Garden of Honor for
Garden.
veterans and their spouses or significant others, and we have plenty of graves there, so those aren't part of the moratorium.
Should I keep moving here?
Oh, go ahead. We like to look at the flowers at this time of year.
Yeah.
Fundraising has been something that we also have prioritized so that we can make improvements to the cemetery that are over and above what our appropriation would allow us. Our appropriation is, it's black and white, it's nuts and bolts, it's equipment and repairs. But anything over and above that to beautify the grounds, we have several ways of doing that. From 1988 to the present, that's the new one. We just got an anonymous gift at the end of 2014 of $5,000, so that's the updated one. So over the period of time that I've worked for the cemetery, we've raised $1,322,000 for beautifying the cemetery and improving the buildings. And I think it seems to be a trend. People are becoming more and more supportive of the cemetery. I think that they understand the contribution that a landscape that's well-maintained and historic can bring to a community, and they're supporting it in preservation efforts and donations. So,
Now, the second item on the list, the gift of artwork for $16,000, that was just in the Milton Times, was it not?
yes.
Yes. So that was just installed?
That was part of our garden portal sculpture project over the summer. We had an exhibition of sculptures in the cemetery, and that was Murray Dewart's Golden Gate that the Copeland Foundation decided to gift to the cemetery so that we could keep it. So it was, I don't know if any of you saw the different sculptures that were there all summer. No? We had a celebration. We tried to invite everybody. It was fun. We still have a few left in the cemetery. There's a chrysanthemum gate by the pond and an angel. And there's an angel that's suspended from one of the pine trees, but that's you have to go find that yourself, by the pond. And then we had a laurel arch. I don't know if anyone saw that. It was pretty large, and it framed the pond. It was really pretty.
Nice.
And the Milton Art Center joined us for the garden portal celebration. We had sketching by the pond, and they were very helpful in promoting it. So this was just kind of interesting. We had a movie filmed at the cemetery called The Company Men, and they donated $2,000 to the cemetery. They were probably in the cemetery from 4 in the morning till 11 in the morning, and we all had fun. So it was. It's actually, if you ever see The Company Men, it's kind of a dark movie, but you get into this one scene in the movie where like the birds are singing and everything turns green and beautiful, and it's at Milton Cemetery. It's the most beautiful scene in the movie. Okay, the preservation plan. This was something that we had put together in order to get a grant from the Department of Environmental Management. They now provide services to educate historic landscapes, but they don't have any funding as far as grants anymore. And in the preservation plan, we looked at the needs of the cemetery in the future and prioritized the trees that are becoming, that are mature, that were planted in the early 19th century. And part of what I had requested last year was some funding to have the staff trained by an arborist in order to try to keep these trees healthy and living as long as they can, so that would save us money in the long run as well. So that workshop will be this spring. The preservation
How much
plan,
was that workshap?
I think it was around $2,500.
Okay.
And then it was, I think it was 4,700 for the,
It was 6,700 for 2 workshops,
yes.
but I can't remember the breakdown. But one of them, the arborist, was 2,500, so that would leave 42 for the,
I think that's right, yes.
preservation work.
The preservation work, part of this plan, we also looked at the old gravestones. There's so many broken out there that will be lost to history if we don't address them. And it's been something that I've wanted to do for a long time, but it doesn't seem to be enough time to get to that. But now if we get focused with a specialist coming in, and we're going to set up a couple workshops just to work on the old office that we have in the house. We're going to use that as a workshop in the basement to just get production going, get these stones repaired and back out on the grounds, and do it in a way that's historically correct.
Great. I mean, we do want to know that you're putting those funds to good use.
So this was the
So this is-
slide on the stones. And that grant from the Department of Environmental Management allowed us to have some signage designed for the cemetery that was kind of period signage and in keeping with other signage around the town of Milton. The building facilities master plan was something that was done by architect John Catlin, and that allowed us to look at our buildings and kind of assess their future uses. And a few things have been completed, which was the renovation of a stable into the administrative office and the renovation of the employees' office lunchroom, and those funds were contributed by the Copeland Foundation. There was a rental property on the grounds that was in really poor condition that was removed, which allows us more grave space. So it was really money well spent to see this facilities master plan study and kind of analyze what were the most important needs and directions for the existing buildings.
The fire department use it for practice?
I think we discussed that at some point, but that didn't come to fruition. And another way we educate the public and bring them in to use the cemeteries through the historical walking tours that Anthony Samarco leads, and he's been very helpful over the years, and he loves to do them. So he'll probably be back this spring to do another historical walking tour, and it educates the people and brings alive the history of the people who are buried in the cemetery, and they're free of charge. The Friends of the Milton Cemetery was a 5013C C3 tax exempt organization that was put together in 2007, and Rick Ward is one of the directors, and he was really helpful in writing the application to get that status. And we have planned some bird watching tours, raised enough money to restore and repoint the 1877 receiving tomb. If you've seen that stone building in the cemetery that was used to store bodies in the winter. And it was really well done. It was done by, okay, I don't know. I won't say Whitman and Breck, I think, but I'm not quite sure.
We're back to monetary
Back
items.
to monetary things. The cemetery revenue to the general fund from opening charges and pouring foundations, it averages around $430,000 annually, and it incrementally increases because the trustees are always analyzing if their fees are correct and in line with other cemeteries. The other income we make is from the sale of graves, and under Chapter 114 of the Massachusetts General Laws, the sale of graves is divided into burial rights and perpetual care. And we are prioritizing building our perpetual care fund so that the interest from that fund will be able to maintain the cemetery in the future when we don't have as much income. So it is It has increased to about $3.2 million. And that was our float at the parade. It was the back of the float for the bicentennial parade.
Great. So that's the end of that presentation, I think.
That's that.
See you soon.
Okay. Nice.
I think it was interesting what Mary Ann Sullivan was talking about the aging population, and we've done some studies in some members of the New England Cemetery Association about the death rates and how they will be increasing because of the baby boomer generation aging. And people think that cremation will become more popular, and it will, but even if half of everyone who is passes on chooses cremation, the number of burials that will be, the number of deaths will be increased by threefold because of the number of baby boomers. So we have to plan for that and plan for the future, and I think that's what one of the priorities of the trustees is to plan for future use of the cemetery and look for additional lands if possible. I think you all have read about the Deer Run Lane land that we acquired, that's contiguous with the cemetery.
You might refresh our memories, or
Okay.
not all of us were here when that happened. So
All right.
basically, you extended the life of the cemetery, active sales, or, by a dozen years, right, through that?
Well, it's actually closer to 4. I think we'll be
4.
able to get 1,000 graves there. And it will take a while to develop because there's a lot of ledge there, so we're going to have to kind of build it up. And before we do anything, we have to meet with the Conservation Commission and establish a buffer zone for the wetland. But this land is the back of Deer Run Lane, which runs off of Pleasant Street, and it's like 3 houses down from the top of Gun Hill Street. So those new houses that were built there, halfway down the land is a wetland, so they couldn't cross that. And the land that was contiguous with the cemetery that they owned was valuable to us, but they couldn't use it. So again, the Copeland Foundation came to the rescue and purchased the land for the cemetery. So they've been very kind to us and generous.
Therese, so by purchasing the Deer Run land, obtaining the Deer Run land, you say you're gonna add 4 years of grave sales. Is that included in your 15 to 16 year projection of how much you've got left?
Yes.
So it would have been 11 to 12 without that, and that 4 years makes it 15 to 16, approximately.
Yes,
Okay.
of the obvious places that we can develop
Okay.
large scale, but then we're gonna have to look at, smaller portions and maybe removing some of the roads that are close together that are not used that much.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a look at your budget.
Okay.
Okay, that's why we're here. So I guess the first thing that stands out as we look at this is the personnel services line jumps $40,000 from 621 to 661. Half of that is a one-time sick leave buyback for your retiring foreman, I
Yes.
believe. And so that's in line with expectation. So in terms of your personnel situation, you do have, the vacancy is current, is that right? Or it will be there for fiscal year 16?
Yes, I've just
Okay.
posted the vacancies, so that we'll be hiring somebody within the next month or two.
Okay, so is that in-house posting or out-of-house posting?
It's in-house posting first for 5 days, and then we'll post it.
So you haven't incurred any advertising expense yet, right?
What does that mean?
Well, you haven't advertised outside yet,
Oh, no,
right?
no, we haven't.
Okay. Do you, which I guess you'll have to do if you don't have an in-house candidate that you're happy with. I don't know, it's, you don't have any money in your advertising budget, so
Well,
that's, so you'll have to find it from somewhere else for fiscal year 15.
our personnel is kind of fluid right now because the foreman who had been there for a long time retired. His position opened up and someone was promoted, and then another employee was promoted to the senior foreman's position, so we're still kind of juggling the positions.
So
at the
things are
same time.
moving around.
Yes, they're fluid.
So they'll settle down at some point. Kevin?
Yeah, on that subject, Therese, the senior working foreman vacancy, you've budgeted it at a W7A, step 5.
Apparently so. There it
Okay,
is.
is there any way that, I mean, that's the same as the equipment maintenance person who's been here since '86. Is that, I mean, you moved it from a 4 in 15 to a 5 in 16. Is that necessary? Could that come in lower?
I can give you an updated sheet because the senior working foreman's already been hired, and he is at a 5 because we had to put him at the next step up. We couldn't give him less money.
Well, you already hired him.
Yes. Someone in the cemetery moved up, but when I made this budget out, it hadn't been done at that point.
Oh, so there is no vacancy, right?
There's a W3 vacancy, because when everybody moves up, there'll be a W3 vacancy. Let's see.
W3.
That would be the line just above the vacancy.
Yeah,
The MEO1?
There are two of those.
yeah, 2 MEO1s, actually there's 3, but one's at a
Yeah.
W3, but they have a different step.
The sprayer operator became the senior working foreman. He was
Okay.
promoted to that.
All right.
So we currently have a staff of 7, and we usually have 8.
And your vacancy is now a MEO1 that you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Which will be more difficult or easier to find?
We won't probably find that in-house, because most everybody is making more money than that.
Well, there's nobody left.
Well,
in-house.
that's open to the DPW and the parks as well. We post it with them, because they're all in the same union.
Okay, so, overtime. Last year you had $50,338 in overtime. And basically, if you want more overtime in your sort of level service budget, because you think that's what you need, that's great, you can put in for it, but you can't really boost it in the sort of, at least we didn't want you to boost it in your contractual column. We wanted you to maintain what you had from the previous year. So if you had $300,000, that's where it would be in the contractual level column.
Level dollar.
Level dollar sort of situation. So I don't know.
So for the level dollar, I'll decrease that then and give you a revised.
Yeah, we will. I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Okay. But I wanted you to be aware that I wasn't, I mean, you may feel you need that extra 5% of overtime. I don't know. Last year, you spent $44,266 in the year just finished for overtime, so I'm not sure that you need an increase over the 50.
Okay. We can never predict it.
It's difficult. Darnell?
With this weather, How's that gonna affect your overtime right now?
The first store we had, we paid out $5,000 in overtime for 3 days.
Well, we had quite a few since then. So how's it been trying to maintain? Has that been,
They've been coming in every day because the burials have been, it's been really busy with deaths, and so they've been digging graves on Saturday and Sunday just to get them ready for the week. So this weather is not helpful as far as the overtime budget's concerned.
and are they also doing snow removal?
Yes,
That's-
yes.
Kevin?
Just an aside, Therese, I remember a couple of years ago, I think the Capital Planning Improvement Committee approved $450,000, and it was approved at town meeting, and I think some of the money has already been borrowed. And the purpose was for, was it a locker room or for the DPW and the cemetery? Do you remember?
It was shared money between the DPW and the cemetery, but
Right.
what we needed to do was renovate a garage, and what they needed to do was provide a lunchroom and locker room for the employees. So it didn't make sense. We really didn't know how to
Right.
divide it up. I think the initial thinking might have been that we could have a building that everyone could share, but we had already renovated our lunchroom through funds donated by the Copeland Foundation. So we didn't have that need, and the DPW does, and they're in another location. So I did just have a bid opening in late December for renovating the garage, and the total was $191,000. We had predicted it would be maybe 102, so it was way over then. I don't know how that money's gonna be divided. We have to meet.
Oh, you're just renovating the garage?
Right, and putting an addition on it.
Okay. So that's where that stands now? You've just accepted a bid?
I haven't accepted it yet because we don't have enough money, so they're waiting to
Okay.
hear if we can figure out how we can get it done.
Okay, thanks.
Darnell?
On that point, with, Kevin, the total for that was 400,000?
450, I think.
450,000? Because I do know when we met with the DPW earlier this year, they were speaking about the split that was supposed to take place. So your locker rooms and everything was already paid for and done. So did that not, they're saying you didn't need to split anything from that, or you found additional outside funding to get the locker rooms and everything done?
No, the locker room had been done previous to this whole discussion about the needs for the DPW and the cemetery. And we had needs to renovate a garage, and they had needs to provide some space for the employees. And
Right.
I guess, I don't know, the capital budget committee thought that we could have a joint building. But it didn't make sense for either department. So the money was approved, but I'm not sure how it's gonna be divided up.
Because I do know that, I think it was 300,000 that we spoke about when we were there, that they needed for the, to do that locker room and that rec room and that everything, or cafe thing over. that they
Yeah.
went to court on.
Yeah, I think we need to get the DPW and the cemetery and the capital improvement planning committee on the same page here and figure out what to do with this, because the DPW has a situation that is unaddressed, and they have union grievance issues involved in the situation, and it would be great if it could be taken care of. And if it was a bad idea to split the money, then somebody probably ought to revoke it from one party or the other and get one of these two jobs done. It would be my thinking on that, but I don't control that situation.
So I'm from, because I thought the number was smaller than that. I thought it was like less than, I thought it was like almost 200 or something.
They're splitting 100 apiece.
Yeah, split. It was they ended up with they were 100 short. It was 300, and they were split. I thought it was 400, and they split 200 or something. That's what my understanding was when we spoke with them. And then they were 100 short for getting the job done over at DPW.
Well,
I think
we
they
talked to Joe Lynch today,
Okay.
and he really hasn't moved on it, but he told us that Therese has done work on it. So initially, the idea was that they could find a way to take $450,000 and build a structure that would serve both departments, because the capital committee didn't have enough money to give them each enough to build their own buildings. So after it was determined that they could not, that locating it at DPW wouldn't serve the cemetery's purposes, then the problem developed about each taking care of their own. And I don't think DPW has enough money to do anything at this point.
I also know that, in my understanding with the DPW is that they had a union grievance that the union won. And
The
we need
union
to
filed
address
a
that,
grievance,
yeah.
right.
And we need to address that.
Right. And that's why the
and
capital
that's what-
committee gave the money.
In the first
but
place.
In the
yeah,
first place.
yeah, and I'm saying, so we need to kind of take care of that, so.
Well, we'll be seeing Joe on Wednesday, and maybe he'll remember the numbers. Do you recall what that split was of the original 450 from 2 years ago?
It was really not set in stone. Joe was looking for 450,000, and I was looking for around 175, 200. And so proportionally, if you wanted to split that, he would take 300, I'd take 150. So I would need, if he took 300, he can't get his project done because it's gonna cost 450, and my project's costing 191, so I'm not sure what we can do about that. But I think we need to.
Okay, well, did you apply to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee for the balance this fall? Or did you not have the estimate yet?
Well, when I opened the bid, I did ask the capital planning. I haven't been to the committee, but I've talked to Amy, and we're trying to figure that one out now.
Okay.
So we need to have a joint meeting of the DPW and the capital planning and myself.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, it's a problem, but meanwhile, how are you surviving in your garage or without your garage? How's
Well, the
this
garage
working
is
out?
standing, but the longer it is not addressed, it's getting a lot of damage because the roof leaks significantly. Just the water's just pouring in, and so there's gonna be more wood rotted, and it'll be more expensive to fix when we finally get around to it.
So this is a renovation, not,
It's a renovation of the existing building with a small addition. I think it's 1,000 square feet addition.
1,000 square feet, that's a studio apartment, you know, at least. I mean, what is that for?
Maybe I'm not right on it's to store 2 trucks. It would be a heated addition to store 2 trucks in during the winter because
Oh, good.
they don't have a place to store them now, and they have to be in a heated place in order to keep the dirt from freezing so that they can fill the graves. And then it could also be used as a workshop and repair equipment there.
Uh-huh. Great. So I'm also worried about your electric bill,
Okay.
okay? I think you could be about 2,000 short, based on the 35% increase. So we're gonna have to look at that, but maybe we can do something about that in exchange for your cutting back your overtime.
Sounds like a plan.
But, yeah, no, I think across town, everybody lowballed their electrical costs. And maybe, I mean, it's understandable, it's a big jump, and it's, you know, it'll take a bite. I mean, I think across town, we're about $30,000 short of what's gonna be a bill. And you can't come running to the warrant committee for a reserve fund transfer when you can't pay your electric bill, because it is a foreseen item. You know, we should budget for it. So we may have to supplement your line there. At any rate, so does anybody have any questions for Therese about her general expenses?
This gas line.
We have this $11,700 here, that's the one-time money she was given last year, which in our newly designed template might have gone down here under one-time items, but that's
It's
okay.
up there in pink.
It's in pink, it's highlit. This 145 minus the 11 ends up being her $134,000, so it is a level dollar general expense. Darnell?
I'm looking at your level service for your fuel and oil. It's at about 24,000, and your level dollars at 26, and your less 2% at 26. I think that's reversed. Was there a reasoning for that?
You want to say again, Darnell?
If you look at the fuel and oil, line
Yep.
14.
Yep.
You got level services at about 24, so 23,950. Then you have your level dollar, 26,000, and then your level your 2% is at less 2% is at 26,000. Your
Right.
level service is lower than your
Okay,
restrictive.
hang on.
Yeah, the level dollars should be less. I
Yeah.
think some of these are,
This isn't updated.
Is there updated?
I think you're looking at a pre-revision copy. I sent out the 2 revisions on the cemetery. This was from February 6th. You
So I'm
also
looking
had
at the
one
wrong
from
one. 'Cause I'm
January.
looking at the wrong
I
one.
was looking at that too.
Yeah,
You
so
also
I'm looking
had
at
one
the
from
revised. Okay, 12/2. So yeah. So okay, there's another
Yeah,
one. I'm looking
yeah.
at the wrong one here. All right.
yeah,
Let's see,
the,
hold on, where's the numbers?
It
yeah,
is
the
a
12, the
prediction.
12/2 was the original, then there was a 12/2 revised, and then there was
Yeah, this is the rise one
a
here.
2/6 revised. I think we're good now with 2/6 revised. Lee Michael?
And each line item is just a prediction. Sometimes they
Right.
want to be a lot higher.
The wish list of the stone walls and the replacement of street signs, those comprise the one-time items for the next fiscal year, is that right?
Okay. So
That
there,
was an old.
the old,
That was the old budget
the
as well.
old budget listed one-time items
Mhm.
of $12,000 as if they had already been awarded, okay? In the budget,
Oh.
okay? So if that's what, that's not here. The new budget did not give us a narrative, but I can pull that up from the old,
My question is,
sure.
what amount is now requested for one-time items, and do we have an itemization for what that new amount is? Because in the
We don't.
old budget, the list requested didn't match the number that seemed to be indicated on the schedule.
So I met with my subcommittee, and I took apart my budget again because of the questions that you had, and I have one of the one-time items I included in the building and grounds line item, and that was the rolling tent. And,
Oh, good.
so I think that, I think we can include that in our regular budget and still be okay.
Okay, so Lee Michael, originally Therese put in that a $12,000 figure as an expectation of receiving one-time money for $12,000.
Okay.
Okay, and then she told us that the 12,000 would cover a rolling tent and a stand-on leaf blower.
Okay.
Okay. I advised Therese that she couldn't assume that we were gonna give her
Yep.
those things, took the $12,000 out of her budget, and thought you might rewrite that piece of the narrative for us.
I did, did you get my latest narrative?
It wasn't part of your,
It was attached to the new budget, and then it was a Word
is a
document.
separate attachment?
Yes.
Okay, we will find it.
I sent it to you and John and Phil.
Okay.
It
Great.
explained all the different line items. But when I took it, I took the whole budget apart again, and the equipment, line item, I think I might increase that to include the stand-on leaf blower.
Great, so that does have a wish list for one-time items, for instance, stone wall repairs. You had stone wall repairs and replacement street signs originally.
Yes, that's a wish list if,
That's still there?
yes, I mean, that will be there.
Okay,
But it's not in the budget, I haven't put a dollar figure on that, that's just a wish list.
right.
Okay,
So,
as long as you have it.
well, if I don't have it all, I know it exists.
I'll resend it, and
Okay.
then you can forward it to everyone.
That might be great, that might be a good idea. Because I don't. You don't have it either, Phil?
Yeah, This,
Okay.
this, like the historical narrative and stuff, you didn't get that?
No,
No?
I must have spelled my email wrong.
So that would be useful.
Okay, I will.
Great, great. That'd probably answer all those questions along those lines. So, since you have it in front of you, what's the bottom line total on your Christmas list?
Oh, well, the narrative was just explaining line items, it didn't have the wish list items there.
Oh, it didn't?
No.
Okay. But you were able to incorporate the rolling tent into your equipment purchasing?
Yes, and that's what, and I explained those in the line item
Great.
explanation in the narrative, so I'll get that to you. And the, our, major purchase that we need to make really is over 10,000. It's a backhoe that is central to our work, so that's what we're hoping to get funded for.
Okay. So you've applied to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee for that?
Yes, because our backhoe's getting old, and we had to spend $20,000 last year to keep it working. That's not good. That's about the value of it as a trade-in, so.
Well, Lee Michael?
Just to clarify, it sounds like you still have wish list items, but you said that they're not in the new narrative. So will you add those in before you send that
Sure.
to Ted?
Yes,
Okay. Otherwise, we won't have them to consider.
okay. You promise you'll consider them, I'll send them.
We'll consider everything.
We always consider. This might be a tough
Consider
year.
everything.
This might be,
Yes, it's my-
all those stone walls and replacement street signs might disappear under the 72 inches of snow.
Maybe they won't melt by next year.
I think it's about $8,000 an inch. I think we're getting pretty expensive.
Another 1.5 foot predicted this weekend.
Just stop that.
And you're laughing? And you're laughing?
Just say, we're gonna have bright sunny days this weekend, maybe that'll work.
That would work.
Sure.
Man, this stuff is getting.
So, this is a wonderful institution and a great resource to the town. And I don't know, it seems to me there gotta be some nearby houses you can take by eminent domain so you can keep it going, but,
Is yours one of them?
it's not contiguous. So, at any rate, thank you, Therese. I don't think anybody else has any more questions. But if you could resend that narrative, that would be great.
Okay, I will.
Appreciate that. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we will absolutely look at it. I mean, I think the difference, the primary differences you have between, that we ought to be considering, is you want a lot more equipment, basically. Right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's the difference, and that's probably what you're referring to, is having written it up in your narrative, right?
Right, and in the narrative, I explained, doing an analysis of the, past few years, the line items, building and grounds, equipment maintenance, equipment, et cetera, they comprise over 25% of the whole budget.
Right.
More than that, let's say 20, 34. No, about 50% of the budget. So the other line items just kind of like are 0.05 to 6% of the budget. So those are the big ticket items that we need every year to keep our operation going.
Okay. We will, here's that glitch you were talking about. Oh, you know what? I think this is the wrong, that's the wrong version. Get me out of there. I should trash that. Yeah, it's these lines here, your grounds and buildings and your equipment, and you explain what it is you're looking for that you might be able to get with level service funding instead of just even with last year. Great.
Right?
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Therese.
That's the narrative.
Steve, there's plenty of room.
I know, I didn't want to move.
So-
Just a little bit.
It's all right. Foot down.
You're on TV.
What me worry. All right. So, our next budget will be the fire department. And we're happy to see Chief Grant. Jack? Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Man, you haven't had to do anything with this snow, right?
This is by far the worst I've ever seen. I drove around for 2 hours today, just taking a look at side streets, and the hydrants on the side streets are all 2 feet below the height of
gone.
the snowbanks.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah,
You can't,
they're
you
good.
can't,
They're done.
It's,
can't even find where they are to shovel them out.
That's the problem, yeah. You know, we've always said certain neighborhoods you can go in and almost every person shovels their hydrants, and then there's other neighborhoods where people just don't. One of the neighborhoods that we really see every hydrant shoveled, I drove through that today, and there's nothing there. And our own guys said they were out shoveling last week, and with the widening, they're gone again, and there's no sign of them. So it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Well, it just keeps coming.
It just keeps coming.
So do you have any way of locating the hydrants electronically, GPS locating devices?
You know what, that's a project we have to undertake. Honestly, we're still on paper maps. And the problem we're finding this year is that over the course of time, hydrants have been relocated and they're not updated. So there are some in spots that even though we know we're right there, we're not finding them. So what we do is we operate off the maps that we have, and we have a metal detector on each engine. So once you're in the area, you're trying to drive it with the detector.
Have you tried Google Street View?
If they're not visible, back in the day when those maps were accurate,
Yeah.
if the hydrant is not visible, and before before the technology even got to there for us, you'd be poking holes in the snowbanks, hoping to hit it. And you think about it, if you miss it by this much, they have used it to a certain amount of success. But like I say, without the metal detector, you're really up against it.
Wow. Well, it's a challenge. I mean, you can't even maneuver your vehicles around the corners.
No, matter of fact, I put an order out today, and I know we've talked about these kind of things before, and it's kind of a foreign concept anyways, but a box alarm, say, we get a call for smoke in the building or somebody pulls a firebox. We have different levels of response, but that's a box alarm. Gets 2 engines, the ladder truck, and the deputy chief's car. I took the ladder truck off today, and basically we're going to keep that in quarters unless we get a good idea that we actually have a structure fire. It's just too cumbersome. There's generally 1 person on it. It's just a bad mix. So we're going to hold that in quarters unless we really have a feel that there's something actually going on. By the same token, like I just said, we send 2 engines on a box alarm, if we do get that call where there's a strong suspicion we have something, out of the gate, we're adding the third engine. So, yeah, we're just playing both ends to the middle as best we can.
So, but at least you guys don't have to drive snowplows.
Very good point.
Right.
Very good point.
And I can imagine a pretty big plow in the front of some of those engines. Do a great job. All right. So we're gonna take a 50,000-foot view of your budget right now. And the thing that jumps out is two things. The personnel services line looks funny. It just doesn't look right. And the reason is, because appropriated for fiscal year 15 is $4,570,000. Level dollars, $4,571,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Oh,
reason,
I know where you're going.
so the reason for that is because the fire department has not settled a wage contract yet. They are the only ones who have not.
And to even complicate it a little more, when you're looking at the FY15 figure, it's actually FY13 that we're operating off, because they've been out for a couple of years.
Right, it's a 13, 14, 15 contract. Sorry, 14, 15, 16, fiscal year 16 contract that is not negotiated. So in order for the town to negotiate in good faith with the fire unions or one?
One union, yeah.
We have to put aside sufficient money to perhaps fund whatever contract might or might not be, negotiated. So we take a guess at what those terms might end up being, and make calculations, and it's got to go, what would 14 be, what would 15 be, what would 16 be? Compound it, put it forth, and we have a figure of $391,917 for those 3 years, and I can show you that calculation if you would like. It will end up in a separate set-aside article, a separate article to be voted on at town meeting. Last year we had one, but it was only for 2 years, not for 3, but it was for pretty much all the departments in town, because nobody had settled.
Right, nobody had
Okay.
settled, right. And the rest of them settled just ahead of town meeting, as I recall.
What was that figure again, please, Ted?
$391,917.
That's for 16 too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that'll be its own article at town.
It will be in its own article. Right now, in our working budget, I've lumped it in with the Chapter 13 wage set-aside, which is about $35,000. So the line item says $428,000, something like that. What worries me about this, Jack, frankly, is you're hanging out, the fire department's hanging out there by themselves, okay? If it gets voted down, you got a problem.
If it gets voted down,
So does the town, but,
right, right.
but it's sitting there all by itself as a single department. I can't tell you how happy I'd be if there was some movement on that front, It would, before we had to put this thing to print. I think that would be terrific.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So, anybody have any questions on that bit? Okay. All right. So anyway, that's why the wage line looks so funny. The other thing about that wage line is level service is looking at, is calling for 4,800,000, and the level dollar is 4,571,000, and that, and the difference between them has nothing to do with raises.
Collective
Okay.
bargaining process, right.
So then you go, okay, what's going on here? And if you go through the budget, there's a lot of it, okay? And I don't know if we wanna, we'll come back to this page, but here we go, all the firemen, okay? And, yeah, somewhere around on the second page, well, on the second page, there is a vacancy.
Second page at the bottom, I believe you're looking, right?
Right.
And then I think the other
Oh,
one
and
you're
on the
probably
first
looking
page,
at is on the first.
first page is the new position, okay? That's being asked for. So that's, you read it in the narrative, it's for a lieutenant, a training lieutenant primarily. So, anyway, Jack can tell us about that. Right now, I just want to identify the difference in the dollar number figures, okay? So we've got a 66,000 there.
It's 110 right there.
110 for those two.
Well, the vacancy is not part of the difference, because that would be in either scenario.
The vacancy, as a matter of fact, at this point in time, there's a name to the vacancy.
good.
When we submitted that, there wasn't.
Great.
So, yeah, technically,
Vacancy's already-
as of July, probably right around, July 1st, we'll have that person back from the academy and in the street. He starts into the academy on March 2nd.
Great.
So coming up fairly soon.
That's good.
That's still
Anyway, so this is the page which, next to the police page that's similar, is the one that always just blows my mind. Because I never knew people could get paid for so many different activities within one job. So, more power to them. At any rate, when you look at this, you can see the difference between fiscal year 15 appropriation, level service, and level dollar, which is to say what it was the year before. And this is nicely laid out, Jack. Anyway, you can see here fiscal year overtime, 300,000 from fiscal year 15, what we're in now. Level service request 400, level dollar 300, which is what it should be as a level dollar request. So there's 100,000. There's another.
Yeah, training.
There's another 10,000 in training, and
I think that's all
there's
of it.
Nope. There's a giant amount, about $43,000 in PD buyback. Okay, difference is from 19,000 to 62,000, and it's 40 grand. So that's about, those are the main things that, I mean, there's a couple thousand here and there somewhere else. Those are the main things, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what is PD buyback, paid days? buyback?
Personal day buyback.
Personal day.
Yeah, that's, and to be honest with you, the true figure is the $62,000 figure. The figure that we're playing with fire on is the $19,000 figure. Personal days they're actually earned days. There are two, I believe, that have been negotiated in the last couple of years that are flat out personal days closed. But they have the ability to earn a personal day each quarter for no use of sick time. At the end of the year, if they haven't used those, they can cash them in. So the $62,000 figure comes from the fact that contractually they have the right to cash them in. So that basically is the figure that if everybody had every personal day and cashed them in, that we would be responsible for.
Go ahead.
It's correlated to unused sick days. Is there a limit, or is it all their unused sick days?
No, it's if a quarter of the year.
Yes.
They have not used any. So it's got nothing to do with accumulating.
I see.
It's just,
So if they
yes,
haven't used,
it's
general,
non-use,
if they
right.
haven't used a single sick day, then they get assigned
They get, basically, we
personal
call
day
them
that they
personal
can-
days, but
they
it's an
can-
earned day,
that
right?
they can cash in. They
Exactly.
get one per quarter for
They get
unused.
one per quarter,
Alright.
yes.
But at the same time, at the end of their career, they can buy all the sick days back?
No,
No.
it has to be at the end of that calendar year.
Ah,
Yeah.
so that,
Not sick days, it's personal days.
so that replaces, I mean, for instance, last year you had a $14,000 sick day buyback.
The sick day
This year you have
buyback,
another $10,000.
yes.
Okay.
That is at the end of a person's career, after they've turned in however many they had, which I think is 40. I think they have to have at least 40 to turn in, and then I believe that it's X amount of dollars per day beyond that. So that's a one-time thing at the end of the
So the
career.
personal days are a reward for not using a sick day,
Yes,
but you still get the sick days
As a buyback.
as a
you
buyback.
still get the sick days as a buyback.
At the end of your career.
Gee, Darnell, but I want to join your department.
All right, so what we're saying, so the max a person can get is 4 days. Is that what?
The max they can get is 6, because there are 2 that are personal days that are just, like you
Oh,
say,
so
you
they
don't have
just
to earn
basically
them.
have 2 days. All right, so
Yeah.
it's maximum 6. And we have no, so we need to get these guys out of here. All right.
So
Six days.
days times the number of
Fire,
firefighters.
and that gives you your gives you your
Right.
62 grand.
So they can
65.
cash them in if they don't use the personal days.
They can cash them in if
And
they
they
don't.
lose
All
them if-
6. If they don't
All
use
6, yes.
And
But if
lose
they use them, they use them.
Most use them, which is why that's one of the spots over the last couple of years that we have
All right, Darren.
stolen from and, funded other things. So that's the difference between that 62 and the 19 that you're seeing, is we've taken and dispersed it, hoping that they're not gonna fold their arms and say, hey, we're cashing in every one of these.
Okay, and they don't carry over to the next year.
They
So
do
at the
not
end
carry
of-
over.
So, okay, excellent.
I was just saying, what's been the practice?
The
Practice
practice for the most part, there
Take
are
the
a
day.
handful that take the pay. For the most part, they use the time.
Use the time, got it. And is that 19,000 number, is that what was used last year, or that's just a third of it, or?
I think that's, probably within reason where we need to be,
Got it.
probably with a little bit of a cushion.
Got it.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Jack, when they use a personal day, don't you have to fill that spot with overtime?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Well, I should correct that. Not necessarily, potentially. It depends on when they take it. And the problem from my end with the personal days, vacation days, you're allowed 2 people off, case closed. So if we've got a full group, say, staffed at 14, that brings us down to 12. We're still good, we're not in an overtime situation. There's no limit, other than Christmas and Thanksgiving, there's no limit to the use of personal days.
Could I ask a follow-up? Are there any restrictions on the days they can take as personal days?
No, just like I say, Christmas and Thanksgiving.
So they don't have to get permission of anyone to take a personal day?
They do not.
Okay.
Doesn't that make staffing safely kind of tough?
Well, it's not that they have to call in and let us know they're taking it, but, I can't prevent them from taking it, put it that way. So, you're gonna staff because we've got an 11-man minimum, but, we may be, we
Is
may
there
be
any
putting on
sort of-
3 overtime shifts.
Is there any sort of hierarchy involved here? And if you're the lowest, newest hire, do you have the same rights for personal
You do,
days as
yes.
anybody else?
Yeah. Yep, I will say the only, and it did not become an issue, but, the only time we foresaw it being an issue was Christmas Eve, where a lot of people put in for them. And again, most days during the course of the year, somebody's willing to take an overtime. You don't have to go to what we call holdover. Say we drop to 10 men, and we had nobody willing to come in, somebody from the previous day is staying to maintain that manpower. So that would be the only case where you'd, bump Lomian off the totem pole.
I really hope that they're not, the union isn't looking to increase that. I hope that's not the stumbling block in this negotiation. So, looking at fiscal year 14,
Add 14 on,
okay, you budgeted 27,000 for personal day buybacks, and you spent 15. So that track record would indicate that the 19 would be fine.
right. But
But people are entitled to.
exactly. It's kind of one of those fine line things. We think we're okay there. We don't really think we can steal any more out of there, but we think we're okay sitting there.
Okay, I think we know something about that now that we didn't know before. The training is a $10,000 item, and you talk about that in your narration. The paid, let's see, what is it? The $40,000. Oh, that was it, the paid buyback. So you now have full complement because you filled your vacancy. And you didn't have any vacancies for you haven't had vacancies for a long stretch.
We hired 3 last year, so we did have some.
You did have some.
Yeah.
Would that have contributed to your overtime bill?
Yes, it does contribute to the overtime. Honestly, a lot of it's just that we haven't adjusted that overtime as the wages go up, so it's just creeping apart, which is why for the last, say, 5 years, we've been right at or even above the $400,000 mark. Either slightly below it, like in the high 390s, or I think the worst year was up to 4.25 even. So like I say, with all the level dollar budgets and all that, we haven't been able to really move on that too much. So the thought is if we can get it up to around where it should be, and then moving forward as the contracts get settled, if we put that 2% bump in it, we shouldn't get to this, spot where we get in jammed up overtime-wise. I would have to say, though, more so than the vacancies, it's a combination of everything, but it really goes up and down based on sickness and injury. When you've got guys out long-term on either one, and as well as the time of year, if you've got them out coming late winter into spring, then, and here's where it combines with vacation time as well, you do okay. The overtime stays relatively low. If you've got a bunch of people out and you come into that high-use vacation, you'll see the overtime skyrocket.
Well, fiscal year 14, you had $300,000 budgeted, but you spent $390, and you were able to cover it pretty neatly because you didn't spend $85,000 in your basic wage and salary line.
Right.
And I figured that was from a vacancy. Is that?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's when you have no
Going
place.
forward, if you have no vacancy,
Right.
then will your overtime come down that much? Maybe not.
There again, same as Therese said, maybe not is the right answer. You just don't know. We're going through one of those years this year where we've got an awful lot of people out, and it's a painful year overtime-wise. Last year, we actually got through, we did not have a high level of injury, and like you say, we had a little bit of salary money that we could steal from so that we stayed within range. But
And the year before, you even came to us for an RFT for $35,000, and you
Yes.
ended up being able to give it back.
I gave it back, yeah.
So that,
Yeah, and that year there, you could kind of, I knew I had to come and ask you for it, and I thought I would give you some back. I didn't think I'd give you all back, but, you could see that the people that were out were coming toward the end, and they were, coming back to work, and it all came together nicely.
Darnell.
So am I hearing that we might see an RFT for overtime?
Provided that the selectmen vote in my favor, you will see an RFT for overtime, yes.
Any ideas
For this
on,
year?
numbers?
For this year, yeah. Yeah, it'll be exactly the number I'm looking at. We're be looking for 100,000. Yeah, it'd be the same caveat that if we don't use it, we'll give it back to you, but we'll be looking for 100.
We may not have it.
Oh, got it.
I get it, yeah.
It may not be there. It may have,
Yeah.
gone under the plows.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
So what do you do?
If that, in that case, you run short. If you guys don't have it, if 10 men show, we run an engine short.
Well,
that's suicide.
that's now policy area, and that's not really our purview, but you gotta realize there may not be money.
Oh, no, and I do, believe me, and I get that you guys get the seriousness of it, but like you said, if it's not there, it's not there.
We have to do mid-season cuts.
Well, but the other difficulty is that if we know you're coming to us for $100,000 of overtime this year,
Mhm.
then it kind of does make the case for trying to fund it for next year.
It really does.
And that's difficult too.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that, and I get what you guys are going through year to year, and this may not be the year that you can fund it, and we'll keep putting it in there. But we are definitely getting tighter as the years go on, and you'll probably see more requests.
Why do we get tighter as years go on? Is this an
Well, again,
attitude
those,
thing, or what?
the collective bargaining process, yeah, just, if the overtime stays here and they go up, that 6, 8, 10% over.
Oh, no, I get that.
You're creeping away.
I get that. Oh, sure, no. I mean, if you've been at 300,000 forever and you need a
Right.
10% increase would be 30,000, not.
Well, I think it's a case where we've been underfunded for quite a while. Even when we've made changes to bump it up, we haven't bumped it up to where it should be. So it's years where things go good, you get away with it, and years where things go bad, you just don't get away with it. Which is exactly where the $400,000 figure, or the $100,000 increase comes in. I think that sets us straight. And if we're able to, take a look and say, all right, we're a 2% wage increase this year, or a 4%, or whatever it is, if we
Right.
keep pace, that corrects the problem, I believe.
Right, so just to put it in context, there might be a couple $100,000 for the entire town, above and beyond contractual levels of, support.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at, and you're saying to me that you need half of it, right?
We got projects that are out there that we don't have it. Bottom line.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's a
You've got, I mean, the town's got a problem. Because if everybody needs, another chunk of 100,000 or 50,000 or 20,000 or a van driver or whatever above and beyond what they were doing last year and got by with last year, it's a problem.
Yeah, oh, no, absolutely, I completely agree with you.
Okay, well, on that cheery note, do you want to tell us about equipment line?
The equipment
The
line,
one you characterized, this is your regular equipment line that has been as high as, I think, 50 in the past.
it's
Has
been
whittled for 60.
Yeah,
And it's been whittled down to 30. And last year you invented new tools and found new places to get things and
you might be giving me too much credit there.
and got something from the hospitals, I think.
We
even.
did get a saw from the hospital, yes.
But this year you think you really need the $57,000 or bust.
This is all stuff we need. We're not inventing anything.
Right.
You know, there again, it's my request, my pretty much drop dead, if you look at the lines for, as you drop to the level service and the -2, we go back to that 30, and I kind of hold the line there, with the stipulation that we'll, you know, prioritize what we have on this list. You know, what you don't fund this year will be back on this list next year.
So, are the storage conditions for the hoses, do they factor in the life of the hose?
They, in years past, they did. At this point in time, no.
No.
No, the materials now hold up. I still do the practice of, because I don't care what the materials are, we still do the practice of stripping out the hose bed once a year. We carry 1,000 feet of the big line, the hydrant line, on each piece. And it's rare that you ever lay the whole thing out. So by stripping it down and repacking it, you know, you're putting different hose at the bottom and the top, and you're changing where the folds are. So you're, you know, hopefully you're extending the life of that in that way. But as far as the old days of having to hang it and dry it out and all that, that's gone.
Oh, good, because you don't have the room to do that anyway. Steve?
You know what? Surprisingly, we do. The old hose racks are down in the basement still. I've never seen them used myself, but they are down there. I don't know how conducive our basement is to drying, but the hose racks are there.
On the list of equipment requested, is that in some kind of a priority order?
No, it really isn't. It's, you know, it's a matter of, you know, going through and checking with last year's list, you know, seeing what new purchases you may need. So it's not in a priority order.
Is that something you could do, set it into a priority order?
I suppose I could.
Some, but not all the money's available, or that kind of thing, would you?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, just, you know, if we just go down the list as well, and I know we've talked about this before, some of these, and I hate to say this because it sounds like we don't need it. If the second item on the list, thermal imager, that would be a fourth imager. That would be a backup. Like you say, I hate to say backup because, you know, these things have a hard life, and it's very rare. Radio is another one that will be one backup. I'd love to build up a bank of about 6 backups. You know, these things are in and out for repairs, you know, relatively frequently. So, but there again, you know, understanding what you guys are in, if you cut me, those are the decisions that I make. The have valve that I have written there, 2. One of them is to go front line, so that one is a priority. The second is to create that backup. So I'd go through that way, and I can certainly break that down for you guys and email it over to you.
That would be helpful, yes.
Yeah, I'll go through that tomorrow, break it down. When we get into things like, you know, the turnout gear, you know, the hoods, the gloves, of course it's the lower end stuff. it's just an estimate of what I need, and, you know, I know if I say I need 2 hoods this year, I might need 6 pairs of gloves. It kind of plays off each other. That's a best estimate. But yeah, I'll be happy to go through and let you know what we have, what's looking to be backup, and, you know, what's looking to be frontline and all that.
Well, that would be good. So, do you want to tell us anything about the condition of your buildings?
Not much to tell probably, further than, you know, what we said back in the town meeting. We're waiting on that study, and the weather's slowing us down there from getting the RFPs out to get the people in. We suspect that it's gonna come back that we'll need to build new. Not that they can't be saved, but the fact that we have an architect on the committee that we had, he strongly suspects that the replacement value will, you know, supersede the rehabilitation value of it.
So if the town can't build new facilities for 10 years, what do you do in the interim?
In the interim, Bill Ritchie and I have had those conversations a handful of times. I think what he would like to do is take that, we went to capital needs for some project money earlier. What he would like to do is take the project name off that and use it as needed with what comes up. The heating systems are very stressed right now. So if we had to come and ask and say, all right, we think we need new heat, we're locked into new heat. Whereas, you know, if we say, you know, we might be able to hold this together. If I look into this, bring this guy in and take a look at this, and, you know, so we're trying to prioritize.
You know, Bill has a $9,700 boiler repair for the East Milton Fire Station on his hit list.
Yeah.
And that's great. What, I guess I'm kind of confused. What happens, I guess, nowadays, if there's any need for a boiler repair or a paint job, or, you know, or anything like that, it's not in people's actual budgets to take care of a small situation like 10 grand. It's just not there.
It's just, you're right.
So you have to go to facilities, or you have to go to, you know, if it's an emergency, maybe you come to the warrant committee for a reserve fund transfer.
Mhm.
And it's just not there. There's nothing in anybody's budget that is there for, you know, maintenance.
Right, and to be perfectly
You have to
honest,
call
that's how we
plumber.
got where we are.
Right.
Because in our department, it hasn't been there since 1980.
What happened in 1980, do you suppose?
Well, that's
Culturally.
just the other side of
So how the hell
Proposition
with
2.5.
it, right? You know?
And to be honest, I don't know whether I've thrown this out here or not, you know, basically because I'm second generation in the fire department, I know some of those historical things. At the time when 2.5 went through, the chief said, look, it's either put men out in the street and cut the running force, or scrap the maintenance budget, and he scrapped the maintenance budget.
Right.
Probably happened a lot.
I'm sure it did, yeah.
I mean, it happens not just in the fire department.
Right, right.
And other towns.
So, you know, like I say, we kind of went through, and to me, if it's not life safety, you know, if the fire alarm systems need to be looked at a little bit, again, the heat, you know, this year here especially, things like that. But to me, if it's inconvenient stuff, I say we don't spend the money on it until we know what's going on. And if we know that, you know, say one building's being taken care of, you know, we can direct money to the other two, but even so, prioritize and hold off. You know, as long as they're standing, then, you know, they're not in good shape, and, you know, I wouldn't I wouldn't say that it's in a drastically different condition than it was 15 years ago. You know, we've worked in these buildings for, you know, 25, 30 years, some of us, and some of us longer. I'd say let's, you know, stay the course and do it right when the time comes, and take care of the things that need to be taken care of, and if we can get by, you know, with what's there, we do.
Well, that's presuming that.
Presuming.
Replacement's coming.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a whole, but that's why I say, let's, you know, let's wait for the report to come back, and then see where the chips fall then. And we may have to circle the wagons in a different direction on the other side.
You might. Because even if, you know, I mean, even if the report says, well, maybe you need a new building, that doesn't mean there's money there for the new
Exactly.
building.
Exactly.
Okay? So you may have to circle the wagons back out of, you know, economic
Out of
reality.
economics. Yeah, and I would say that would be the
So-
case, if anything, you know, I think we have a pretty good idea of, you know, where the report's gonna go. You know, whether it does go new buildings or, you know, substantial renovation, it's still gonna come to an economic decision that will be out of all of our hands.
Well, it'll be in the voters' hands.
Exactly.
Which is where it should be.
A much larger set of hands.
Okay. Anybody have any question? Oh, good. Lee Michael and then Mike.
Electricity for this budget?
Yeah, electricity. You don't want to turn the lights off, do you? You're about
You don't want to turn the
7,000
lights off.
short, I think.
Yeah.
You're about 7,000 short on your electrical budget.
Oh, are we? We'll
Yeah.
have to take a look at that again.
Because I think you were basing it on your 14 budget as opposed to 14 actual, maybe, I'm not sure.
We'll take another look at that then.
So we'll probably do something for you there.
Okay,
because-
yeah.
But, yeah, that's, yeah. Mike?
Chief Grant, I'm new to this warrant committee stuff, but I was on the subcommittee for fire, and I was the reason for some of these questions that you got in the email.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for, it was very extensive, but there's one in here that you said you were going to get back to.
Oh, you know what? I realized that when I was going through, no,
I can rephrase, this is what, my background is I'm a data
Yep.
analyst, and so I was like, I didn't know anything about fire departments. So I went on the website and found the Mass Fire Incident Reporting System.
Yep.
Which showed me that there was a high rate of fires in Milton and a low average cost of fires. So I thought, are there a lot of sheds burning in Milton or something?
Made no sense to you. Which is why I'm sorry that the subcommittee didn't come together, which was my fault.
We canceled a couple meetings too, didn't we?
Well, we had kind of set one that I was, you know what, it may have gotten canceled on your end as well, but
So, yeah,
I wasn't going to make it. That particular, you know what, quite honestly, for that kind of stuff, it's a bad reporting system. When we do our MFERS reports, quite honestly, they've tied participation in MFERS and then NFERS, which is the national, to eligibility for grants. You have to be doing these. But there's fields that are required and there's fields that aren't required. And neither one of those fields are a required entry. And in looking at them after your question came out, the high number of injury rate that you're seeing there is a matter of anytime you've got a significant run, or incident, I should say, you're going to have people that, you know, pull a shoulder muscle, you know, have some knee pain, have some back pain, and they're putting injury reports in there. The majority of those never see medical treatment, never see any lost time, but they get filed. And I can see that there's at least one, and probably you know, more than one, but not all four of them that are reporting all of those. On the other hand, I'd say it's more common than not to not report a dollar amount for a loss. And I can say I was always one of those, in that we really don't have any training in, you know, estimating construction or real estate or anything like that. So, perfect answer is it's a bad reporting system.
Is it getting, you're still getting credit for the grants that you can apply for?
You're still getting credit for the grants, yes. As a matter of,
that's good, so
yeah, and it's the bigger, which will be, I think I've got that in line either next year or the year after. What, I don't apply for them year to year. You can't go in with a laundry list of equipment like we have here and say, I need this and this and this, and you won't make it through the first round. But we are coming up on the end of the shelf life for turnout gear that we have, which will probably be in this, you know, in the neighborhood of $125,000 to $150,000 to replace the department's turnout. That's the, you know, coat, pants.
Okay.
So we'll take advantage of that grant system for that. The last time we used it was to replace the, probably through 3 or 4 years ago, to replace all the self-contained breathing apparatus that we use. Again, you know, $125,000 project. So yes, we're eligible
$100,000 is a lot of money, right, Ted?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's one of those things. Is what do you do the year that those grants get cut, or that for whatever reason you get denied for those? There's some of them that are very, very applicable, and those are 2 of them. So hopefully that remains the same, and those keep getting passed. You know, just to tie it, and not to tie it up, because we did the training officer. One of the questions was, what do we do in the neighborhood of fire prevention?
Right.
And we really don't do a whole lot, because right now we've got just 2 small grants that come through the state. One of them's the SAFE program, which allows us to go into the schools once a year with a safety trailer, and I think we do grades 1 through 3. It's either K through 3 or 1 through 3, and, you know, do a program with them. That's been expanded this year to a second tier, and they're doing a senior safe program geared toward the elderly. So we'll expand that a little bit more. But if and when the time comes that we can fund that full-time training officer, I've only currently got 1 full-time day staff person, and that's our fire prevention officer. And although it's named fire prevention, it's really kind of a misnomer. It's really more of an inspectional position. Fire alarm systems, oil burner inspections, tank removal, tank installation, that kind of thing. So it's not fire prevention in that you're going out. So if we can get that training officer to a daytime shift position, between the 2 of them, I see enough leeway that they could work and create a public fire prevention program more substantial than what we have now.
So it is right what I read at the website, that fire prevention is an important goal?
Fire prevention is very important. And, you know, the easiest way to, you know, prevent, you know, life loss and property loss is to prevent the fire in the first place. So it's important, but sadly, a very strong statement for them to put in there, because it's unfunded, or it's very, very underfunded everywhere. So they're kind of putting a lot of pressure on us.
They put a lot of pressure.
Although there's probably not a lot of people like yourself that are reading that kind of thing.
I'm trying to be a diligent board committee member here, you know?
Early days.
Yeah, okay, so,
Keep trying.
the other thing I noticed that you'd answered was that injuries were causing a lot of trouble with overtime costs, like.
Yes,
And-
yeah.
And I wondered, is there any kind of light duty that's available at the Milton Fire Department? Or would that help to have light duty available?
It doesn't, I do have it available. It's not very useful, in that we still need that person. If I have the guy in on light duty, I still need to hire an overtime position to man that position on the engine that's going out into the street. So it doesn't cut your costs. Sometimes it forces somebody back to work sooner if they're dragging on. But as far as money saving, it doesn't really equate.
So you told us you had 4 injured on duty when you answered the email. Is it still 4?
You know what? It probably went from 4 to 2 during the time, and now it's back to 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
no more questions?
Like you said, just one of those bad years where we were at an incident the other night, and I could see a guy walking around, and I could tell he was hurt. And I'm thinking, you just shake your head, you know?
Gene?
Yeah, now going to what you just asked, on the overtime, on the $100,000 overtime, that would be where you would pay someone if they were injured and you had to call someone in to, do you have a minimum staffing?
We do.
Okay, so then if someone gets injured, they are called in at overtime, an extra person's called in at overtime?
If we are under that minimum manning, yes.
Okay, and that would be part of the 100,000?
That would be exactly the 100,000. Yeah,
Okay.
that would come out of that pool, yes.
All right, so also you have a line for personal day buyback, which is, as I recorded, kind of a reward for not using the sick day.
It is, yes.
Okay. So then there's sort of, they are sort of part of overtime?
It can create overtime.
Yeah.
It can
So-
create overtime, yes.
So what is the, if you had to break down the 62,000 and the 100,000, what percentage of the overtime is due to firefighting? I mean, when they're out firefighting and you're paying straight, you know.
What percentage of the overtime is?
Would be really firefighting as opposed to a reward, as opposed to calling someone in because of not having, minimum staffing.
Mhm.
What is the breakdown of that? Do you have any idea?
Let me try to answer it this way. In reality, to fight a fire in Milton,
Yeah.
there is no overtime, unless there is somebody scheduled on overtime already because of those manpower issues that we've already
Right.
talked about. We don't call anybody in on overtime, although I should qualify that. We'll call in 2. We'll call in a pilot, which is somebody who directs mutual aid companies that come in to cover our companies, because now we've emptied our station. All of our equipment and personnel is at the fire. So we backfilled the station across the street. So they'll hire a pilot to direct the out-of-town companies to any further incidents that come along, and they'll hire a dispatcher to handle the radio system. So we will hire 2 on any given fire, but nobody to the scene of the fire on overtime.
Okay, so the overtime is not attributable to ever fighting fires?
Not directly, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, that is a good question, Gene. I mean, can you break down the reasons for overtime?
I've
Any
looked at it
meaningful
before. I can't put it that way. You might be able to.
Oh, you have a great benefit program. I'd love to come to work for the fire department.
Like I said, I've looked at it to see if I could put it together, but there's so many things that come together that it's really hard to put your finger on. Like I say, say I've got a group of 14, and I've got that one guy that's out injured, and nobody on vacation, nobody sick. That doesn't create overtime for me. Now you throw in 2 vacation days, and I'm still at the minimum, throw in that personal day, and now I'm in. There's so many things that come together that I don't think you could put a finger on what single element causes it, or what percentages, because it's generally more than one thing coming together at the same time.
I got Darnell and then Phil.
A little bit off the topic. Fireman's Pickens, have we had any updates on him? As how he's doing, things of that nature?
I haven't myself. They just, and I haven't seen the guy since, but they just recently guys down to visit him. I know he's doing very well as far as to be able to give you an update on exactly where he is. I couldn't do that at this point.
Thanks. Phil?
Chief, do you track man days lost per year due to injury?
We do not. I mean, they're calculated, you know, they're recorded, but I haven't tracked them.
Okay. Are they recorded in software somewhere so that they could be,
Yes.
you could find them?
I believe so. Yeah, they're, you know.
Excel spreadsheets, is that what you used?
No, we use Firehouse software, so they would be on those. It'd be a matter of extracting the information.
Could you see if it could be done and we
I'm sure it can be done,
we could
yeah.
get like a 5 or 6 year history of number of days lost per year to injury?
Mhm.
And do you keep, you must, because I think you used to report it in the annual report, fire response statistics for
Yes.
each year
Yeah.
by type?
There again, yeah.
Do you break those out by type or not?
They're by the emphas, you know, type. So again, I question how, you know, useful each one is, but.
Well, should be able to track how many fires you went to, right?
Yeah, but there's different level, you know, say, you know, I'm trying to think of something.
And it would keep false alarms would be separate.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, but there again, if you have, East Milton Square a couple of years ago, house midday, you know, a lot of people are gonna remember that one. But if you have a faulty toaster oven that runs up your wall, catches your cabinets on fire, and we get in there and, you know, hit it with a single line, and, you know, there's scorch marks that are, you know, you don't even have to take your cabinets out, you can clean it up.
Right.
That's
I realize that it's not gonna tell you how severe the fire was.
Exactly, but does it have the numbers? Yes.
But I'd like to see, you know,
Mhm.
last 5, 6 years of number of fires in town.
Yeah, that I can definitely pull up, and like I say, we'll have to look into it a little further, but I'm sure I can pull the injury stuff out of it as
Great.
well.
Okay. Now, the one final question. Do you ever go below the minimum manning level on a rotating basis to save yourself overtime?
Only if I can't get funded on my reserve fund transfer.
Have you been doing that?
No.
Because it was done in the past under,
It was done for 2 years. I don't know whether they were the last two, but toward the end of Chief Larson's time, it was done on a couple of occasions. And, you know, there's 3 stations and 3 engines in this town for a reason. So it's not something you want to do. If we absolutely have to do it, we have to do it. You know, at one of those times when that station was closed, there was a fire in this town that, you know, the nearest piece of apparatus that responded due to other responses taking place at the same time was the ladder truck, and realistically had to sit in the street and not provide fuel to the fire by opening the door, and, you know, so basically had to sit outside and watch it burn for a while. And, you know, substantial damage was caused because of it on a fire that really wasn't that big. So, like I say, it may become a necessary evil if there's not enough money in the town to do it, but it's really not someplace you want to go.
Lee Michael.
Back to the overtime question, since it is a big increase in the budget. If somebody is out on leave, you need to replace that position with an overtime position, right?
There again, that's on a day-to-day, you know, manpower situation. Some days yes, some days no.
If yes, the
Yeah.
overtime pays double?
The overtime is no, time and a half.
Time and a half?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering, is there a maximum amount of time that you pay essentially 2.5 times for, you know, to fill one position where, to keep staffing whole? Because if you have somebody out, they're getting their regular pay, right?
They are getting their regular pay, yes.
And then to backfill that position, you have 1.5 times salary.
Uh-huh.
So is there a maximum time before you can fill it at a regular salary? How does that work within the?
No, there is not. No, by state law, if they're uninjured, they're, you know, it can get to the point where, you know, that if you feel somebody's no longer capable of returning to work because of the conditions, you can challenge that, and, you know, it's involuntary retirement.
Right.
It's an arduous process, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't come across it yet in my time.
Along these lines of trying to be a diligent warrant committee member without really intimately knowing your budget, I'm just wondering about the relationship between taking the appropriate number of personal days and sick days so that you feel well for your job, and then, you know, getting injured or whatever and going out on leave, and how that might contribute to the overtime budget. And I'm wondering if you've looked at Milton's budget compared to other towns and benchmarks for where we are in terms of overtime and injury.
Yeah, we just did that a year or so ago, and well, it's not in relation to injury, because you really can't pick out why other places are using overtime. But I picked, I want to say that it came in at right at 10 towns. I picked the towns in the metro area that were within 10 people above us to 10 people below us personnel-wise, and we were the 7th cheapest out of the 10. So as much as we're spending, we're doing pretty well.
Thank you.
Well, on your question again, when you call people in, someone, and you are below minimum staffing or at, and you have to call somebody in, and they are at a certain level, and so you're calling somebody in at that same level of pay, or is there a protocol to that, or can you call in anybody you want?
To
Cover?
well, in reality, other than a couple of initial steps when you come on,
Yeah.
everybody at the firefighter level is the same rate of pay. You know, there's no, say, you're an engine operator or, you know, someone riding on the back step. There's no engineer's pay. There's nothing. So the firefighters are basically all at the same level once they're at top step. And the same goes for the other positions. We've got 3 grades on the department, or 4 counting myself. We've got the firefighter grade. Next step up is a lieutenant. We've currently got 13 lieutenants. Like I say, base pay, they're all at the same. 4 deputy chiefs, all at the same base pay. So yes, there is, they would be hired at the same rate of pay. There is something called out of grade pay, where if we are not at that minimum manning level, we will take somebody from the lower grade and bump them up. Then they get paid for that tour of duty at the officer's rate of pay that they're filling in for.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Phil asked you about the statistical reports on your actual runs and activities and what you're doing, and you know, we all read the paper and the reports about how fire departments are no longer, you know, their chief mission isn't anymore fighting fires per se. It's really about being first responders to medical emergencies. And so it you know, you get into all these questions of, you know, well, if that's who you are, then why are people being rewarded for their EMT certification? Shouldn't they all be EMT certified as you know, part of the qualification for the job? You get into issues like that. You get into issues like, well, geez, if your business in the 21st century is going to be first responders for medical emergencies, do we really need all those big engines? Shouldn't we have a bunch of small engines? You know,
that's a question I answer frequently, and I answer it this way, in that the other mission, even though emergency medical work occurs more frequently at this point, fires still occur, and they still require the same response as they always did. And so you need that engine. It just, you know, for the mission that it's always been there for, there's really no way around that. And as far as the other goes, you know, where you've got one ambulance running around covering the town, you've got those, it's a good marriage, to be perfectly honest. We counterbalance the fact that they only have the one ambulance running, which would be the case if it ever becomes a, you know, fire service based service. There would still be a one ambulance system. So you supplement that with the engines. And if you take the size of the engine out of the equation, you've got that three-man team showing up on the engine, and you look at that worst-case scenario of, say, cardiac arrest, where you've got three guys coming in, two of them are going to start CPR, one of them's going to get that defib out, get that set up, get it in place. There's been times where, we've revived people before Fallon's has been on scene. So, like I say, if you, and it's always the same question. It's, do we need that big truck? You need the men. And unfortunately, you can't really take the men off that truck and say, all right, this call doesn't require that truck to be put on the street, because the next call may come while they're still on the street. And everything we do is time sensitive.
So the engine is kind of multi-purpose then?
The engine's multi-purpose,
and
absolutely.
So, in other
Yeah.
words, if you don't, you're not gonna say, well, this time take the small
Exactly.
paramedic truck, but,
Yep.
So it's actually sort of cost effective, because
It's
also.
very cost
It's also
effective,
for
yeah.
the fact that, as you just said, that one time where you need the engine and you're responding to a call
Mhm.
and you don't have it, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, and it happens, I won't say it happens every day, but it
Right.
happens, say a couple of dozen times a year, where you're gonna go from one incident to another that aren't just false alarm calls. You're gonna go, say, from a motor vehicle accident on the highway around to a structure fire up on Brush Hill Road.
Right.
So, yeah, it's, like I say, it's kind of a good marriage between different entities.
So when a call goes in for a medical emergency, who takes the call at 911?
That comes into the dispatch center at the police station.
Police station?
Yes.
And they call,
They dispatch both us and Fallon's.
okay, and themselves?
And themselves, yes.
Why do they dispatch themselves on a medical emergency?
You'd really probably have to ask Chief Wells that, but I would say,
Okay, we will.
there are again times that if they're in the right place at the right time, they don't have that team, but they're pulling up with one. They can be closer than we are to certain responses. So that would be my thought. They don't have that team to start doing the CPR, but they do have defibs on, so they can start getting stuff ready so that when the next group of people come, you're just moving that much quicker. And again, anytime you're dealing with a serious medical, time is a factor.
Okay. So what about the EMT certification? Are not all firefighters EMT certified?
On the Milton Fire Department, no.
No.
It's not a contractual requirement. At this point in time, I believe, because we are in negotiations, we've talked about this number, I believe it's 41 at this point in time. And I think where you're going with it is, it's one of those things out there that it's a recognized benefit, and like it or not, if
I mean, firefighters, there's not a category here for saying, okay, you can lift a hose up and point it accurately and get a bonus for that.
No, you're right,
Part
that's
of
your
the
base
job.
model, say.
If the job is now gonna be medical response, and you're not EMT certified, you're not doing your job.
Right, but there's a value to that skill that's out there and accepted on all the levels. If we at this table said, absolutely not happening, you're not getting anything extra for being an EMT, and they come in and say, you know what, we're gonna get whatever, if they sit down and figure out what the state average is for EMTs and go into arbitration, they will win that case. To get to basically, I think the perfect answer to what you're saying, though, is if at some point in time that's say private ambulance systems go away and it's all fire-based all the time, you would probably see all those, the stipends go away, but they'd be rolled in, so the base pay would be higher and you just wouldn't see it reflected here. And good and bad to that.
I thought it was a requirement.
No, it's not a requirement.
It isn't. Okay. Darnell?
No, I was just saying, as long as it's not a requirement on your job description, it's something extra. And until that changes.
Right, and based off where we, where we were at the dawn of time, when the pay structure was firefighting, that's where these are thrown in, and kind of to continue on this, there's good and bad to say, all right, this is now an accepted tool, this is the new base level, and you're gonna lose that stipend, and like I said, it's not gonna go away, it's gonna get rolled in. And I know you guys hate looking at these things, but if we go through year to year, a lot of those fringe benefits don't get touched. If they get rolled in and you get a 2% raise, they're going up each and every time. So, as much as you hate seeing them there are little bits of benefits as money savings to having them there.
Phil, and then Steve, and then Mike, and then...
Couple quick ones. How do you assign overtime? Do you ask people, volunteer? Do you look at perhaps trying to steer it to the $45,000 firefighter instead of the $66,000 firefighter?
Well, again, like I said, all the firefighters are on the same rate of pay. It's done by grade. It's not, there's no...
So the hourly rate you're saying is the same? The overtime rate's the same for a $45,000 firefighter?
Yeah. So if I'm hiring at the firefighter level,
Right.
they're all the same, provided they're on top step. I may have, 2 or 3 that are, on steps 1 and 2.
That's the $45,000.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's 1 or 2 of them. So, no, there's a callback list. It actually goes the other way, to be honest with you. It's based on seniority. But it doesn't start there each and every time. It's distributed equally. Whether you take the call or not is up to you. But if they've got an overtime shift that needs to be filled today, they're gonna go to their list and they hire off a certain section each day. So they'll take that list, and whoever's on top that hasn't been called gets a call. He either takes the call and accepts it, in which point he gets a check that he did take it, takes the call and declines it, he gets an X, or misses the call, in which case he also gets an X, and then it moves to the next guy.
So you're distributing it equally?
It gets distributed equally. Yeah, for the grade. Like I say, if we're hiring at a lieutenant's rate of pay,
Right.
I don't have the option to go into the firefighter's rate and say, hey, this guy's cheaper, I'm gonna change the shirt color of, that he's wearing today and put him in the front seat. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. Hypothetical question, so I can understand how you assign people and how your staffing works. If you were to come back to us and say that you've done the analysis of the number of man days lost per year, and I'm sure it's not going to be this much, but if you were to come back and say it's 365 man days per year lost to injury, would it make sense for you to hire an additional level 1 firefighter? And is there a way for you to structure what you do so that that person would be available for most of the overtime needs as they come up?
Probably, yes. I did a little study at one point in time, which I believe I have with me. Basically, while I'm looking for it, I broke it down to, by NFPA standards, actually, you know what, I know the figures within reason. By NFPA standards, we should be running right around an 80-man department. There should be 4 people on each engine, actually 4 people on each piece of apparatus. So like I said, puts us right around that 80 figure. To put ourselves up to that level, is gonna cost us right around $750,000. The next logical step for us would be, say, we can't afford to do that, and to large extent, with the population and the residences that we have here, I won't say it's a perfect scenario, but we're getting the job done, running with 3 people on the engine for the most part. Where we're short is on the ladder. So if we were to say, all right, we recognize the fact that you guys are understaffed, let's make a change. The next logical thing would be to man the ladder truck with a proper crew, because we're, like you say, we're running on with 1 guy for the most part on that. To do that, we would have to up the minimum manning to 12. We would really have to put 15 on a group right now, and the cost for that, just salary, not benefits, puts you up to $250,000. So you'd really have to do a true cost analysis of, is it cheaper to pay that guy overtime because you're not bringing X amount of people on to try to lower that.
So in other words, you need that one person for each of the shifts.
You'd need that to increase your numbers
Right.
across the board. 1 position equals 4. To change, to go from 14 to 15 is 4 people, not 1 person.
Okay. Thanks.
So, when someone is paid overtime, that's on their base salary?
That is on their
1.5
base
on
salary,
base
yes.
salary.
Yep.
When they're not being paid overtime and they're being just paid, it's their base salary, but it could be plus all these other things. Night differential, out of grade.
Well, those don't go into your weekly pay. Those are paid out over the course of the year, like night.
Over the course of the year.
Yeah, night differential comes in a lump sum. I forget,
But if
since
you-
I don't get it, I forget when it comes.
Education, all these things. So if you hire a new firefighter at $66,000 a year,
Mhm.
but then he qualifies for all these things, his cost is, plus health benefits.
Right.
He's gonna be up there at $100,000 like that, and that's what you're paying in time and a half for overtime, for the same amount of hours. So that's a hard calculation to make, I think.
I agree with you.
So tell me about night differential in education law. What is night differential?
Night differential is, and I believe I just looked at this as well, it's a stipend that they get for working nights. It's $55 a week currently.
Doesn't everybody work nights?
Everybody works nights.
So what's the differential?
I can't answer that for you.
So this is just extra pay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there again, the reason I can't answer how it came about is it's existed long before me, so.
It goes way back.
It goes way back, yeah,
Decades.
as most of these things do.
Okay.
You're right, it's in comparison to the police, all our people work nights, so, yeah, like I say, where the birth of it is, I don't know.
Okay. Steve?
Jack, I was wondering if you could describe a little the interrelationship between education, training, and then EMT certification. Is the education sort of like the Quinn bill was?
Similar, yeah, the pay is different. It's actually far less than the Quinn bill is. But yes, it's for class work that's done outside of the department.
And is it fire service related?
It's fire service related,
Classroom
yes,
work?
yeah.
Okay. So can you get that for like a degree or?
You get that, I haven't looked at the language in a while. I believe you start getting it at an associate's, and a little bit different than the Quinn bill, that I believe the Quinn bill only changes at the different degree levels. Once these guys qualify, say they've taken 6 credits during the course of that calendar year, their stipend will go up by those 6 credits.
Is there any state reimbursement on this? Or
There
that
is
gone
no
now
state,
too?
it never existed.
Okay. And then training, that's all of the firefighters get training irrespective of if they're doing college work and other stuff too? Or?
Training, if you look at that training budget, I believe currently we sit at 25 and we're looking to go to 35, so that doesn't get us too far. What I've set,
But what
Maybe
kind
you
of
could
thing
clear
do
this
they
up
get?
for me. Who's getting paid the $25,000?
that's where I'm going.
Person who's doing the training or the person who's receiving?
A little bit of both. When I came in, first off, when I first got in, I said, all right, you know what, I'm gonna assign the training and get it going. And you find that with this job that you're here and there and you just can't do it. So I looked at the time, I forget what was in there. Because we did bump it up somewhere along the way a little bit to the 25. I looked and said, you know, what was happening before was a class would come up and he'd say, all right, who's, you know, you and you go. And what was happening was you'd have, say, 2 to 4 individuals go out and take a class. There was no mechanism to bring that training back to the department. So I took and set that training officer up as the way it currently sits is he works on a regular group. So I kind of went through a bunch of exercises and said, all right, he's going to have to be out to the fire academy to take, you know, this many trainings himself to be able to come back. He's going to go to the off-duty groups or the groups that he's not on his own time, X amount of times per year. He'll be training his own group X amount of time per year, and came up with a calculation that was somewhere around $11,000. That's not gonna work. That's gonna encroach on, I set it at a lieutenant's level, so there'd be some level of authority at the instructor's level as well. That was encroaching too closely on the deputy's pay, and that would cause issues. So what I did was I set the stipend halfway between a lieutenant and a deputy. In effect, you're paying the training officer at a captain's rate of pay. And like I say, he covers those on his own time at this point in time. So between 9 and 10.
This is a stipend for doing his job?
This is currently, well, he's doing an additional job. This is not.
Additional job?
Yes, this is a job that's created. It's not, if he's a shift lieutenant, he's not doing any of this work other than, you know, possibly conducting, you know, a small in-house training on his own group, on his own engine company, which is what we want to avoid. Because what existed back then was, you know, Group 1 might say, you know what, we're going to train on motor vehicle extrication this week. And Group 2 might say, well, you know, we're doing ladders, and there's no coordination, there's no quality to the training. So, you know, this was a big step forward for us to do it in this fashion. So like I say, it's currently set at that 9,000, so 9 to 10,000, somewhere in there. So there's another, say, $15,000 left. And with that, you're looking to prioritize what needs to be done. Like this year here, the whole fire code switched from the Mass Code of Regulations to NFPA. So one of the things, you know, we did there was we sent all the deputies out to that training. So, you know, like I say, it's a little bit of both. It goes to one individual, and then it goes to select groups that you know, feel need to go off-site to do some training.
Couple more questions.
So you, go ahead, Steve.
Any overlap between the EMT cert and the education group?
No, no, there really
Okay.
isn't.
And then one last question. When you look at this in the entirety, it seems just like you're trying to avoid just being transparent to say that, you know, a firefighter is going to work nights, so the night shift should be built in, that we want to have them all certified in EMT, and so we're going to hire them at 56 instead of 46 and have them walk through the door with all of these minimum entrance requirements. Instead, this Byzantine thing that's just, it doesn't.
That's, well, and again, we're sitting, Ted, the way you started us off is probably a good statement at the 50,000 foot level. Like you say, most of these have been in there longer than I've been on the job. And in reality, a lot of times, they're promoted by the town in that, it's in lieu of, we can't, I went through a period of time as union president where around the state, there was a large number of 5% raises being given for a period of time. And there was even a number of 6% raises. They weren't, I won't say they were prevalent, but 5s were, and 4s were everywhere. We've seen 1 4% raise in my entire time on the job. So a lot of these things are put in the contract to avoid that. And looking at it the other way is a cost savings, in that once that is in your base pay, there's been, we've had 1 4, but we've had 1 0 in my time as well. So that base pay is expanding, where these aren't necessarily, and matter of fact, a large number of them haven't moved in years. So it's, there's two sides to it.
Well, it does make for, as Steve put it, a Byzantine structure.
It really does.
And looking at it from our point of view, oh my God, show me a teacher's salary. Well, even that gets to be a pain because of their ladders and steps with educational incentives and what have you.
These guys need ladders.
So I mean,
It's not ladders, it's lanes.
is there any move at all nationwide, anywhere in the country to rationalize this stuff? Is it all like this across the country?
No, well, I can't speak for across the country, but even across the state, it's not. But there again, you're going to see a strong push from the town's perspective not to have this go away, for that very reason that it doesn't go away at 0, it goes away at a cost, and now it exists in your base pay. The guys that are doing the negotiating across the street would love to see these go away.
I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would make a difference.
It does.
It should.
Well, like I said, there'd be a cost to roll them in.
Oh, sure. Sure.
So then the town, from the town's perspective, that's going to grow.
And it's true.
And it is.
I mean, if you have a firefighter level and a lieutenant level and a chief level, basically, then these things allow a little differentiation in between those levels, incentive to move on and move up. So
Well,
some of them.
I will say most of these exist at all levels.
Right. But when you walk in as a rookie, you haven't qualified for the education or the MT.
No, you haven't. But you can qualify for the education in fairly short order if you're coming on the job with the degree in hand. Because you can matriculate that stuff into a fire science program and come out with a bachelor associate's degree, I should say, in fire science in fairly short order.
So DFib and hazmat and EMT can all be acquired pretty quickly?
DFib and hazmat, are obtained, just through regular training. EMT, you have to do that outside, but, it's a matter of, going and taking the EMT courses. There's no preventive, it's not like we're capping it, saying, all right, we've got, our 41, we're not going beyond that. So if they choose to pursue that, that's on them, they can do that.
So just for drill, firefighter walks in at $45,000. but he qualifies for all these things, plus he's a firefighter, he gets night differential, right?
Yeah, they're getting night differential
So what-
coming through the door on day one.
He's got all this stuff, what is he actually taking home?
I've never done the exercise myself. Well, we can look on the salary sheet, because it does have that.
67,000.
Well, it gives you the base.
But it'll give you the actual, on the column to the far right.
Annual base,
No.
total annual pay.
You know what, you
Column
may
on
be
the
right,
far
Ted, I'm
right
not
is the total
sure.
annual pay with longevity.
With longevity, yeah, so it's not gonna
Base
give you
plus
those.
longevity, it doesn't differentiate between,
No, you're right.
you know, it doesn't include like overtime.
Right.
And it doesn't show that a certain individual is killing it in overtime and somebody else isn't, so.
Yeah.
So I was just,
So you would like to see, aside from overtime, these added in? Because, I could do the exercise for you.
oh, it just would be a good idea if you knew what you were paying your guys, maybe. I don't know.
It's in there, it's accounted for, and we know, not totally, but we know what we're
Right.
paying them per item.
Right, because, when somebody comes, when you say, oh gee, I need another firefighter, and people go, oh, $45,000. And then somebody else will go, yeah, plus
Well,
benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the firefighter benefits too, that add up a lot.
and
So it's not just 45.
I actually just did a quick rough calculation. Past the first two line items, which are the pay for the base pay, for the chief and for officers and firefighters, you add up all the rest of the numbers, at least I just did it for the FY15 appropriation. The rest of the items past the 139,000 for the chief's pay and the 3,359,000 for the officers and firefighters' pay, the rest of it makes up about 23.5% of the total.
But what are you adding in there?
Everything, paid holiday, out of grade, night differential, sick buyback, all the way down the list.
Okay, because not everybody gets all of that.
Right, but it is 23.5% of the total appropriation.
So people make about 20% above their, no,
Something like that.
23% of the total appropriation. So people are making about a third more
Yeah.
than their base pay,
Approximately.
approximately.
Approximately. Maybe 30%.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah, 67.
On average, and it's like you said, Chief Grant, it's not evenly distributed, goes,
Well, there again, some of it is evenly distributed, some of it isn't.
Yes, yes.
Oh, man, we beat this thing to death yet?
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
I'm glad to hear it this year, because nobody ever went into detail in the last couple of years. I guess we had other things to ask you about instead. So thank you, but yeah, I think we can move on from compensation.
I just had this question from way back. So there's 55 firefighters roughly?
There's 56, yes.
56, and 41 of them have the EMT certification?
41 have EMT, yes.
So is there ever a case where you have trouble just doing an EMT run because you don't have enough people with EMT certification around? Or is 80% coverage good enough that is pretty much all these?
Yeah, we're covered
Never
pretty,
has.
yeah, we're covered pretty well across the board that, yeah, we've got one or two in each company basically at all times.
So then we probably want to encourage you not to roll this all together and say it's part of the job, because we're getting a benefit from the 15 people who haven't got the certification, which is, right, it's not impacting your ability to deliver the service.
Not in
You
its
get a
current
benefit on
form.
overtime too,
Not in its
because now
current
you don't
form.
get, that's not part of the base and considered an overtime.
Well, Yeah, that's the crew that's gonna show up at my door, you know. Sorry, no EMT certification.
You gotta watch your nasty questions. You're the guy.
They
I was
take
afraid
your
of it.
names,
Yeah,
you know,
my
yeah.
name.
Where's that
I gotcha.
ambulance?
The house is burning down.
It's a really bad
It's only 20 people watching.
Well, Jack, I appreciate your coming in and staying late.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
If you can follow up on that prioritized equipment list.
Yes,
that would be
absolutely.
great.
I'll take care of that for you tomorrow.
In the history of man-days lost to injury
Mhm.
and fire response statistics by type, correct, Phil?
It's great.
The injury one might take a little longer.
Okay.
In that I'm gonna have to speak to the tech guys to dig that out. But the other two I can have for you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
You wanted 5 years on that.
Yeah.
All right, so tomorrow we're gonna be here with the schools. I'm of a mood to blow past and skip anything else that might be on the agenda.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Jack.
Jack. Appreciate it.
Paul? Paul?
But I can't make that motion, so.
Paul?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Super, thanks very much, guys.